Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Minuk, I am your host, Drew Mindell. Ezra Ginsburg on the IR this morning with a bad back. We wish him a quick and speedy recovery, but the fall from grace for the former number one pick in the Jewish Men's Hockey League has been swift and immense, but we hope to see Ezzy back here very soon. Dave Minuk, good to see you on this Saturday morning. It's been a few days off for both of us. Haven't had a show since the epic Monday night, Tuesday morning broadcast after the triple overtime game. Nice to see I'm guessing a Detroit Tigers hat today. I sort of see the T, and I think I can see a tiger behind the T there. Yeah, but I do enjoy that hat. That is a new one from your collection.
It is. I always like the Tigers. Saw a lot of Detroit Tiger games, so I'm a big fan of the Tigers and the way the logo sometimes.
There you go. Nice hat on this Saturday morning. Nice to see so many of you joining us, including Ezra in the chat, which is impressive because he can chat. So apparently the back pain has not radiated down to his fingertips as of yet. So that's good to see. When we get to that point, when he stops chatting, let us know. Maybe that'll be when we have to, call in the real medical professionals to deal with the numbness that are in the fingertip.
Aaron in the chat is saying that Ezzy has a bad back from carrying our show.
I don't know about that. I'm not sure that I would agree with Aaron there, but I can appreciate that. Maybe you're trying to be nice, Aaron, to somebody who's on, a little bit under the weather. And that I can appreciate. No. Anyways, it is Saturday morning, Dave Minuk. It is good to see you. The Winnipeg Jets are going to play again. We know that. As for when that game is going to be, time will tell. It could be as early as Monday. It could be as early as Tuesday. We don't know. Depends on what happens tonight in a game 6 between the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Maple Leafs had an opportunity to close it out on Thursday, losing, of course, in overtime as Nick Suzuki scored for the Habs on a 2-on-0 in overtime. And I'm not a hockey coach and I'm not a real, hockey strategist, but I think a 2-on-0 in overtime is usually a bad idea.
Yeah, and talk about a disparity or a dichotomy. I watched that overtime, and then I watched the Carolina-Nashville overtime with, a full building, and you thought to yourself, now that's excitement. That is, it just seems like a completely different game, and obviously we have to deal with what is reality here in Canada, and we'll see it a little different. I think I saw someone, maybe it was John Shannon or someone tweeted that it'll be 444 days since the last time there's been live fans in building. Of course, that's going to change tonight in Montreal, where they have 20 plans to have 2,500 people in the arena. So that's going to be very cool to see. But yeah, you're right, Drew. For the Jets, I think there's probably a little bit of benefit based on that condensed first round schedule. They called it a four game sweep, but of course with all the overtimes, 5 overtime periods, it adds almost another game to their schedule. And look, everybody knows that when you come into the playoffs, you're not 100%. You have guys who are banged up and they're bruised. So, and that sort of game, especially based on the fact that it didn't start till 8:45, it didn't end till 1:10 in the morning. And we've heard guys talk, throughout the last few days. A lot of them didn't get to bed till when I was leaving the arena. I think I tweeted. I said this is the latest I've ever left MTS Center or whatever it's called. But I left at I think I left at 2:30, and I was leaving, and I saw guys pulling out of where the Jets parked. And I saw them still leaving, and that was 2:30 in the morning. And other guys didn't get home till that's funny. And other guys, as he's saying, don't block me for those who are going to be listening on the podcast later, promising to behave. I'm not so sure as he can behave. We'll see. But you tweeted at him saying he could be blocked. Anyways, point is,
he was criticizing the show. He was saying the show was missing something, and I guess in his defense, maybe the show is missing something. I'm not sure exactly what that something is, but there is a je ne sais quoi that he brings to the broadcast on each and every week.
I think Mother Max is hit it on the head. Marty Bird is what's missing right now. It's not necessarily Ezzy. Anyways, a lot of these guys didn't get to bed till about 4 or 5 in the morning that night. I didn't get to bed till about 4 in the morning.
Well, adrenaline was coursing through us. The same with me. You did your work at when we finished our broadcast, and I think it was about 2:15 where we signed off, 2:15, 2:20 on Tuesday morning when we signed off. I didn't get to bed, I went into bed, but the adrenaline is still pumping through you. And, newsflash, I didn't actually play in a hockey game, but, it was, 3 o'clock, 3:30 before I finally got a few hours worth of sleep. But yeah, imagine the players themselves. I mean, how athletes are, professional athletes, they're not going to bed probably 4:35 in the morning.
I think Mark Shively said 5 o'clock in the morning or something like that. Like I
believe it.
Yeah. So I think basically the idea being, why am I saying that? Because Tuesday was a complete write-off with these guys. And even Wednesday was a bit of a write-off. So I think the way the coaching staff this has allowed them to kind of reset, recharge, allow the guys to, get that energy level back up. And I think it was Paul Stastny in yesterday's media availability said he kind of felt like they had an opportunity to flush their legs for the first skate. And then yesterday was actually kind of felt like a real skate. So I think from that perspective, you have a team that's ready to go, and there's a benefit, I think, right? Montreal, I mean, it hasn't been a particularly physically punishing series,
right?
But at the same time, there's a toll to be taken, and it sounds like they're going to try and do a quick turnaround. It's not going to be 3-4 days after that series ends. There's going to be, if that series ends tonight, there's a very good chance that the first game would be on Monday or at least Tuesday. So I think that those teams will have a quick turnaround. And where if you're the Jets, you've had a chance to game plan. You've game planned for Montreal. You've game planned for Toronto. You've had your guys heal up, mend up. There's always the talk of, how long is too long a layoff? But I would be of the mind that I think there will be a lot of benefit for the Winnipeg Jets to have this opportunity to kind of get ready and rested.
That argument, that the layoff is too long. I think that the rust, if there's any rust, that rust lasts for 5 to 7 minutes of the first period of the first game. Ultimately, the benefit, I think, of having this time off is way more than any downside to it. Especially when you look at, to your point, Dave, the Leafs and the Habs, they're playing tonight, and if it doesn't, if it ends tonight, then they're probably back at it, like you said, Monday or Tuesday. So a pretty quick turnaround. Albeit, the travel, isn't serious or it's not heavy, but, the Jets should be the well-rested team. So, yeah, they might have a little bit more rust to shake off, but that's a meaningless amount of a problem. The Jets are going to be fully healthy, or as fully healthy as you can be this time of year. And I mean, I think it shows. I have to go back, and really, study it. But I think year in, year out, you see that the team that ultimately wins the Stanley Cup, and I'm not saying the Jets are going to be that team, but the team that ultimately wins the Stanley Cup has one series that is a short series where they're able to take care of business, relatively quickly. 4 games, 5 games, in the Jets' case, it is closer, even though it was a 4-game sweep, it is closer to 5 games with all the overtimes. I mean, really, when you consider it, the Jets and the Oilers played 5 hockey games in the span of 5 nights. What was it? They started Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, Monday. You played close to 5 hockey games in 5 nights. So that toll that it takes on you, you do need that time off. You do get a huge benefit from having that time off, and ultimately it's going to only help the team, especially as you get into the next round, be it against Toronto if they win tonight, or if they win on Monday for Game 7, or the Montreal Canadiens. It's there's no downside to what the Winnipeg Jets are currently experiencing. They're on the ice this morning at 11, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you're right.
And these practices are there hasn't been anything out of the ordinary in these practices. You've had everybody on the ice. There hasn't seemed to be anybody, taking a Veterans Day off or any lingering injuries. They've had to. It seems like they came out of the Edmonton series, more or less as healthy as you could expect. I mean, Blake Wheeler, if he hasn't already had a vasectomy, I think he had one after blocking that shot. But at the very least, it seems like everybody on the team is pretty healthy, and that's hugely important for the Jets heading into round 2.
Yeah, and the one thing we didn't get a chance to talk about after the show, and I jokingly texted you it as I think either the next day or the day after. I said, I miss you guys. Maybe we should do just a quick pop-up show for to celebrate things. But
this is when you texted us at 2 in the Tuesday morning at 4 a.m. or something.
Yeah, I was like, maybe we should do a quick show right now, a little post show. But no. But the one thing we obviously didn't get a chance to talk about was the fans and all the fan support, and Josh Morrissey, Pierre-Luc Dubois. They talked about it. in subsequent days, that idea of fans being outside the building. And I was actually shocked. Like I really was. Like I think at 2:30 in the morning, I tweeted it, but just the fact that people were outside downtown Winnipeg honking, and Josh Morrissey jokingly said, I'm not so sure the downtown residents may have appreciated it so much, but they did. And I thought I actually thought it was remarkable, to be honest with you, that people, within reason. I don't think there's anything inappropriate about it. Like obviously they're not gathering outside; they're in their cars, which is fine, and they were showing support. And I thought that was. I mean, that's hardcore. That's dedication, but it was evident, right? Like it was evident. And again, we're in a situation where you can't be in the building, right? And so like I said, I was one of, let's say, 50 people that are inside the arena for that triple overtime game. And as I talked about on that post-game broadcast, it was an unbelievable event, but without the fans, it was just so different. And Paul Maurice has touched on that throughout the course of the season, but also more so in the playoffs, just this idea of, and you can't help but think about it, right? Like you can't help but when you watch these Nashville and Carolina games, and Drew, you're talking about, like we talked about this,
and the Tampa Bay Lightning are very concerned about making sure nobody's wearing a Florida Panthers jersey in their arena.
I can't get over the fact that story was real. I think Andy Strickland out of St. Louis tweeted that, and I followed the link, and I was watching it, and I thought to myself, first of all, it was super cringy. Like I was like, this is like, I watched most of the video, not all of it. And I was just like,
when they threatened to call the cops on the guy
Tampa
with his
Bay,
11-year-old son.
Yeah. And I just thought all I could think about was like, could you imagine trying to enforce that policy here in Canada with like when Toronto comes to town and like 50% of the jerseys are Leafs jerseys. Anyways, for people who don't know and are wondering what Drew and I are talking about, there was a story out of Tampa Bay where a guy from a Panthers fan was wearing his Panthers jersey, and they have certain sections that are
with his 11-year-old son. He was with his 11-year-old son.
And anyway, so it's not the entire arena. The policy isn't for the entire arena. It's essentially where the TV, I guess, would catch you in certain sections. And so you're not supposed to wear team jerseys. Evidently, he phoned Ticketmaster, and they had given him the all clear that he was okay to do that. They obviously got the policy wrong, but it just elevated, and it was just really uncomfortable. And essentially now Tampa's had to wear egg on their face and change their policy, which they did. Almost like I tweeted the story. I was like, I didn't really think this was going to be real. And then like within 10 minutes, they changed their tune. So
it's not a new policy. They've had it, I think,
2015.
Yeah, since 2015, and it's just so embarrassing. I mean, is your self-esteem as a franchise so low that you can't be, you go to an opposing arena, if there's a person wearing a jersey of the different team, that guy's got a target on his back from other fans. Hopefully they keep it clean and they keep it polite, but to try to threaten to call the cops on the guy, I mean, we digress completely from what we're normally talking about here, but it was absolutely just an atrocious look for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
We can ask Brian Engblom about it in the third hour of the show. We'll see we'll see what his feeling is. But anyways, the point is that essentially the feeling that you get from having fans in the building is what Paul Maurice has talked about, just that idea of that energy, and you can see it, right? Like these guys in Carolina and Nashville were it seemed like it was just the play was elevated. And look, Carolina is a very good team, but I just thought like just the finishing of the hits and the energy they seemed to get from the crowd, rising up to enjoy that. And of course, Carolina had a savage kill of, the joke about Nashville hanging the banners after they defeated them in 7 games. The social media team in Carolina is pretty good.
Pretty quick. They're pretty funny.
Anyways, just bringing it back to my original point, though, I just think that the Jets players, because like I said, they're out leaving the building same time I am, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was, and they could definitely hear all the fans honking. So I think it was a nice way to show support for the team, but again, very different from what the normal experience would be like, which is why I think tonight's game in Montreal is going to be so interesting to see 2,500 people in that building, and 2,500 isn't a big number, but it is going to seem like a sold out crowd relative to the quote crowd noise that we've been subjected to for the last year.
No question about it. And obviously there's no change anywhere in sight here in Winnipeg, and that's how it should be given our current,
Yeah.
hellscape that we somehow are still living in. It seems like we've been doing this for, 2 years at this point in time, but we digress on that, and this isn't the COVID hockey show, so hopefully we won't really have to touch on that very much. But, let's get back to the Jets sweeping of the Edmonton Oilers, because I mean, you had in games 3 and 4 sort of two of the most epic games in Winnipeg Jets history. And I'm not, going to sit here and rank which one is more epic, or if you go back to, the Dave Ellett double overtime goal, or, Timu breaking the record, Mike Bossy's record. I mean, there was a lot of historic moments for the Winnipeg Jets over the years, 1.0 and 2.0, but to have what happened back to back, the comeback in game 3 and then the eventual overtime winner, and then just the triple overtime game, it was a week that I don't think, or it's not even a week, it was 24 hours that I don't think anybody here in Winnipeg will forget about anytime soon. Obviously, when you come out on the right end of the ledger on both of those games, it makes it that much more memorable. But I think, that I even, 5 days after the fact, 6 days after the fact, it really was a little bit remarkable what we witnessed both on Sunday and then Monday and then into Tuesday morning in games 3 and 4.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And you know who's the biggest winner on all this? The Jets, for not having to jump on a plane to fly to Edmonton on Tuesday to have to play a game on Wednesday. Can you imagine? First of all, can you imagine how terrible that hockey game would be after these guys didn't get to bed till 3, 4, or 5 in the morning, and then have to jump on a plane and then play a game?
At that point in time, you're basically playing your fifth. I mean, when you factor in all the overtimes, you're playing your fifth hockey game in 6 nights. I mean, the quality would have been absolute garbage because you can't expect professional athletes. You can't ask professional athletes to be able to perform at the same high level, game in and game out when you're playing so many games in such a compacted window of time.
Yeah, and I think look, going back to those 2 games, that 4-1 comeback was remarkable. I mean, there's no way of, and everyone wants to put it on Archibald, and trust me, he deserves a big, part of that L in game 3 because he took that unnecessary penalty on Logan Stanley, who had Logan Stanley being the difference maker in a playoff series this year. So I don't know how many people would have, but look, I think it was a remarkable 2 games. I mean, you're right, Drew. I think the idea that we're talking about seeing 2 games in a 24-hour period of that nature is something that you're not really ever going to see again, because I don't know how many back-to-backs we'll ever see in a normal season, normal in quotes, back in the NHL, hopefully ever again.
You're absolutely right. Let's welcome our first guest into the program. His name is Murat Ates from The Athletic, a good friend of ours. Murat's appearance on the show brought to you by Dr. Les Rikus and the team at Linden Market Dental Center, official dentist of Illegal Curve Hockey. Don't be an Ezzy. Always wear a mouth guard and give yourself peace of mind protection, as well as facial, teeth, and mouth protection. To make an appointment to get your teeth tooting, visit lindenmarketdentalcenter.com. I guess, don't be an Ezzy could also mean, we need to get a massage therapist or a chiropractor on board as well to deal with his back pain there, Murat. Good morning. It's nice to see you. How are you doing on this Saturday morning, buddy?
Good morning, Drew. I'm doing well. Happy to be here. Sorry to hear about Ezra and his back, but I'll take the 2 you guys. You guys are full first class as well. I guess we'll make do, eh?
We will have to survive without Ezzy. I mean, it won't be easy necessarily, but I have faith in our abilities to power through and overcome the adversity that is Ezzy being on the injured reserve. He is in the chat, though, so he is keeping the folks entertained in the chat on this Saturday morning. Murat, we were talking, Dave and I were about, before we look ahead to round 2 and, the shrugging emoji of the Winnipeg Jets opponent that isn't yet known. We were looking back at, the epic 24 hours that was games 3 and 4 last week. And I mean, even today, 5-6 days removed from what we witnessed, it really is remarkable that, from 4-1 down in, late in the third period in game 3 versus all the way to the end, Kyle Connor's overtime winner, I guess, 27, 28 hours after that, just the stretch of hockey that we had the opportunity to witness and how memorable it's going to be for you, for Dave, for myself, and all the Winnipeg Jets fans all around the world.
I mean, couldn't put it better, to be honest. It was the closest 4-game sweep I've ever heard of in my entire life. If there's one out there, I would like to know about it, to be honest, that could even rival something like that. For me, it was every time it looked like something was supposed to happen to push Winnipeg out of this series or bring Edmonton back in, it seemed that Winnipeg had the answer. And it might have been Dylan DeMello's hand of God save in Game 2. Third period, it's 0-0, Connor McDavid with the puck on his stick, right? I mean, even then, could have been 1-1. Game 1, there was examples there too. But Game 3 and 4, I mean, I cannot believe at 4-1, 3 goals, there's 10 minutes left in the third period. This game should be going back to Game 4, 2-1. Everything's on lock. Winnipeg didn't even have a ton of momentum in the early third period. And then you get that Josh Archibald hit. And I mean, I don't know for a fact that that's exactly what fired up everybody so much that Logan Stanley was hit hard. But they get the goal early on in the power play. And you see Matthew Perreault fired up, which is one of the joys of being a hockey observer of any kind, is that guy's emotion. And they scored so soon that in the back of my mind, I thought, and I think I tweeted to this effect as well, like, they scored early. There might be time here. And because that's the way the series was going, they just continued to push and continued to push. All of a sudden, Blake Wheeler is just flying again. It looks like it's 2014. I mean, Josh Morrissey's getting the goal from the point. They win in overtime. So much so that the comeback idea in Game 4 wasn't surprising at all. Like, until that game was on ice, you knew, I think, that they had an extra push because Edmonton was doing all it can just to recover from that and give Winnipeg something to deal with in Game 4.
And Murat, we talked about the forwards. We knew about Connor Hellebuck, of course, but the defense. The defense was the big question mark coming into this series. And then Josh Morrissey has the series that he had. What were your observations of this Jets defense through those 4 games against the Oilers?
Well, I want to couch it a little bit in there's no such thing as shutting down Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, right? There are scoring chances. Even if Connor Hellebuck stops them or Leon Draisaitl from the slot in triple OT or double OT, gets a slot shot that and a one-timer that he misses. These things happen. At the same time, I thought that it was Josh Morrissey's best hockey that I can remember since possibly 2018, 2019. I think Dylan DeMello had a lot to do with that, being a veteran partner that he could count on and rely on, and the communication between those two guys, which I thought always was the strength between Morrissey and Trouba, the level of communication that they had and the way they seemed to be able to read off of each other. I thought that DeMello's poise and presence and those 5-foot passes and always putting his partner in a slightly better position did have something to do with that. But at the same time, Josh Morrissey found something. I don't know what, I don't know how. You're watching him go one-on-one with Connor McDavid, standing him up. Watching him getting sticks on pucks in lanes, playing stick to stick in a lane, blocking pass attempts to Leon Draisaitl in the slot on the same overtime shift, right? These are not generic defenseman does defenseman things I'm giving an example of. This is first overtime against McDavid and Draisaitl, and he's laying in the way of everything, stopping everything. And I think Josh Morrissey has been lionized a lot in the media in the last week. And oftentimes I resent that sort of stuff. I rebel against that. We're making heroes of human beings and all of that. But this was a step forward. This was a special series. This was an arrival moment or a re-arrival moment for Josh Morrissey. And he'll have his hands full for him again in round 2, no matter who it is.
Absolutely. Murat Ates from The Athletic is our guest. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, we're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. Murat, after the series ended, the narrative that I think people read more often than not was what happened to the Oilers as opposed to what did the Jets do. Do you think that, that sort of narrative, resonates in the Winnipeg Jets dressing room, and maybe the chip on their shoulder that I think they started with in the series could carry over to round 2 as a result of what the post-series analysis was?
Well, I mean, before the series, Andrew Cobb says it's a little disrespectful to be counting Winnipeg out just yet. And then after the series, he's saying one of the things that they all noticed in the room was that, every time that they looked at the screen on their own, they're watching TV and other series are coming up and they're looking at the series predictions and they see a whole bunch of Oilers logos and not a lot of Jets logos, right? So I think this stuff reaches them. I think this stuff gets heard by them, and I think it fuels them as well. So if that happened then, imagine Winnipeg playing against Montreal, the French-speaking center of the universe, a huge market, or Toronto, the English-speaking center of the hockey universe. I mean, there are going to be Maple Leaf logos everywhere if Toronto closes it out tonight, sort of thing. And so it's just going to be more of the same for that room. And I think that, pop in, fire away.
No, you're good.
Oh, gracious, pardon me. I thought I forget how to Zoom sometimes. So, well, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that, like, in the dressing room, you have to believe that you are the reason for your success. As much as there's a sense that, you hear Blake Wheeler calling it razor thin, acknowledging bounces in his series summary, or Paul Maurice starting with Connor Hellebuck. You have to also get this sense that they believe that there are things that if they do and if they play a certain way, they have a chance against anybody. And I think, one, that's just good psychology. Two, it's true. Even in a favorite series, even if you have Edmonton at 60-40 or something like that, in real life terms, that's closer to a coin flip than it is a guarantee, right? And so all that you can do if you're the Winnipeg Jets is shave the percentages a little bit closer in your favor, a little bit closer in your favor. Connor Hellebuck does that. I mean, Winnipeg's finishing quality does that, but also the way they played. When you have Blake Wheeler and Kyle Connor, two of the best offensive players, Mark Scheifele just below them, I would say, in the commitment to it, but still very good, playing a one-person forecheck, backing two guys off. I have photos I posted to Twitter where you see 4 Winnipeg Jets across their own blue line because they acknowledge that one pass cannot beat 2 forecheckers as it had done during the regular season. And Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in transition were getting the puck in the middle of the ice in a safe pocket to build up speed and attack a Jets blue line that they had numbers against. Well, this time around, they had to either make a special play, going 1-on-2, 1-on-3, or what have you, accept that they're going to get physical contact on their way over the line, or accept that they're going to lose their speed or have to give up the puck on their way into the zone. And still they got their chances because they're that good. But you reduce it, right? You by steps, by margins. And I thought that they did really well. Mark Scheifele really impressed me, a step forward to me in terms of his willingness to be patient and not chase that offense. Blake Wheeler was incredible to me from start to finish. There were speeds he was hitting that reminded me of turning back the clock, but the commitment to the game plan from that top line I thought was really impressive. And that's even before you get into Copp, Lowry, Appleton, et cetera, and the guys that do this for a living, essentially. So I think Winnipeg absolutely gave themselves a chance by changing the way they played, and whether it's us against the world or these little micro adjustments or both, as it so often is, I mean, full credit to them for being where they are.
Murat Ates is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning, the 29th day of the month of May. Nice to see so many of you joining us in the chat. We always appreciate the support. Murat, of course, covers the Winnipeg Jets for The Athletic. You can read his great work there. We highly recommend you subscribe. Insight and coverage of the Winnipeg Jets, the likes of which you don't get anywhere else.
Well, we're not going to ask you to spoil your article just yet, but of course you did talk about that idea of Montreal versus Toronto, and we're not going to know exactly who that is. We may know tonight. We may not know tonight. There's still some potential for uncertainty, but if you could give folks a little bit, you don't have to reveal everything you wrote, Ron, but you can give folks a little taste. Which team do you think the Jets better line up against?
Well, I think they likely better line up against the Montreal Canadiens if you're looking for that so-called easy out, which there is no such thing as in the NHL. Just ask Vegas, who had to go to Game 7 and a big game against Minnesota. The heavy favorites don't always necessarily win. Just ask the Edmonton Oilers, depending on who was setting the odds for that series. So picking a winner is sometimes picking poison in a way. I do think that Montreal has a little bit less superstar talent. I think it has a little bit less offensive depth. I think both of those two teams defensively are similar. And then a lot of folks, it'll come down to whether you believe in the magic that is Carey Price, multiple gold medalist. I mean, there were times where he's been the best goaltender on the planet for long stretches of his career, or Jack Campbell, who is just playing at another level right now. And, whether it's goals saved above expectation or what have you, he's a really special player for Toronto this year. So we get into the on-ice stuff, and we go a little bit deeper than that in that article. But we also get into things like likability, Ben Sherrod, Yoel Armia, old friends, loathability, all those injuries that Winnipeg faced against Toronto, or the sense of just underdog city, right? I mean, I think I write in there to some effect that the Winnipeg Jets, may have, or not the Winnipeg Jets, pardon me, Winnipeg citizens, myself included, may sometimes have a bit of an underdog complex or an inferiority complex when it comes to giant cities like Toronto. Even though I lived there and loved it, it was fine. We won't have to talk about that. But like in Toronto, they probably thought about Winnipeg once or twice at some point, acknowledged that it was in fact a city, wondered why we don't have an airport, and then went back to whatever they were doing because Drake released another mixtape. Right? Like, we're not on their radar as a general rule unless we have to be as a city. And I think that there's just something so special about that. And you have to consider all angles of this kind of fun series preview. And I think we did that.
I appreciate the heavy snark you're bringing to the show on this Saturday morning, Murat. That's usually our job, but I like it. I like the spirit. I like the energy there. You know, to that point, though, you talk about sort of the round two and looking ahead to round two, and there's a lot of parallels, of course, between McDavid and Draisaitl and the skill that they bring, and then you look at the Leafs with Matthews and Marner. Marner, of course, who can't buy a goal in the playoffs right now. He's Nikolai Ehlers 2.0. Hopefully they won't trade him for Rasmus Ristolainen this offseason. But when the Jets. When the Jets made the switch and sort of put Kopp, Lowry, and Appleton against McDavid and Draisaitl, they had tremendous success. Looking ahead to round two, is that the matchup you would use against Matthews and Marner? I mean, if it gets to that point, would you give Kopp, Lowry, and Appleton sort of that heavy responsibility and free up the Scheifele Wheeler line? And everyone, when the Jets acquired Dubois, pointed back to what he did against Matthews and Marner in the bubble last year. Sort of how would you deploy the Winnipeg Jets forward group? Or if you're Paul Maurice and you get last change, who do you think you match up against Matthews and Marner?
I do think that would be a primarily Kopp, Lowry, Appleton thing. I trust them so much, right? When I was talking about that commitment to a certain type of forecheck earlier, the star players might do it 99 times out of 100, and those guys do it 100 times out of 100 in my mind. I think they have their dials just set. And for me, Matthews and Marner are, I guess, a little bit different. I don't see the blazing speed, though they have speed. And I don't see... I was going to just find other superlatives for speed, basically. There's no such thing as Connor McDavid, no matter who plays. But what they are exceptionally good at is these overlapping plays in the offensive zone that move the puck towards the middle of the ice. There are going to be tons of switches to call. There's going to be tons of coverage issues to sort out, decisions to make. And those guys drive the middle of the ice, whether it's a skilled play, a redirect play, a cycle play, whatever it is. They have different tools in their belt. And I want Kopp and Lowry and Appleton as well in that sort of matchup as much as possible, because Kopp and Lowry manage those switches, right? That communication from two lifelong centers just about is second to none on the Winnipeg Jets. At the same time, there's no such thing as hiding Scheifele's line against the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? I mean, I think that this coming Monday will be 2 weeks from John Tavares' knee. I know the concussion is an unknown timetable, but he skated earlier this week. I don't know what his future is, even without him. I mean, Alex Kerfoot has stepped up, played particularly well. William Nylander, who is, in a way, to bring up Nick Ehlers, I mean, playing 17 minutes a night, despite possibly being the best forward so far during this series, is they have depth, I guess is what I'm saying. So there's no such thing as one line doing the matchup and then the other kind of running rampant against a soft underbelly. I just don't see a soft underbelly for Toronto, especially if Tavares comes back. And then the other thing to note is that as much as I would have agreed and did agree, and right to the effect that I agree that Kopp, Lowry, Appleton against McDavid line was a good idea, we saw it, I think, really pick up to start overtime in Game 3. And before that, there was a lot of, both lines get those players, those superstars. They just play so much sometimes. I don't know if Toronto's going to run their bench exactly the same way as Edmonton did because they have more depth, but there's no way around, I think, at least your top 6 and your top 4 playing against Toronto's best players.
Saturday morning, Murat Ates is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Murat covers the Winnipeg Jets for The Athletic, as you all definitely know and read about.
Murat, I really want to talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois. He seems to be a guy who's being written about right now. I mean, he was speaking yesterday and in the media availability. What have you seen from him throughout the course of the season? And because that everybody kept pointing to this, what he was able to do against Toronto, and now there's a potential that they're going to be going up against Toronto. We know he's a young guy, and we have a tendency in society to have a need for instant gratification. See Logan Stanley. And if you don't have that success right away, there's a problem. We know what the Jets plan for Pierre-Luc Dubois is. They want him to be part of their center depth for the next 5 to 7 years and give him, a 1-2 punch in Mark Scheifele and Pierre-Luc Dubois. That's going to, really make them an envy potentially of the league. But right now, because that's what we have to deal with, present reality, what are you seeing from him? And are you seeing those signs of what the player the Jets traded for?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm seeing a player that's younger than Logan Stanley is. So I love that you use his name in the preamble. And I think that that's something that we need to remember. The second thing I want to throw in there is he was as good as he was against Toronto, against Tampa Bay in the playoffs too. I mean, Columbus didn't win last summer in that particular matchup, but there are special things that he's done against some really excellent teams in the playoffs as well. But we're talking about right here and right now, right? And I don't think it's fair to say that Pierre-Luc Dubois has taken over games or dominated or produced massive points since he arrived. I want to couch that in that 2-week quarantine, that injury. Gosh, that would have been an awkward transition to any new team. And then he gets hurt again towards the end of the season. This has not been how you would draw it up if you were him, even on your way over, right? It hasn't been necessarily ideal. But the good thing, and with Winnipeg, we were just talking about Copp, Lowry, and Appleton, and then Scheifele, Wheeler, and Kyle Connor. I spent a lot of time talking about them, and they've played a lot. I think those are your top 2 lines, despite how it sometimes gets drawn up. If you look at the 5-on-5 minutes, I mean, Copp, Lowry, Appleton played a ton. Winnipeg has that to lean on. And because Winnipeg has that to lean on, and if you're looking at Stastny, Ehlers, and Dubois, and every time that they do make one nice play, I see people just like hoping, almost writing the news story that they found their chemistry. They found their chemistry. Well, I think that chemistry is a work in progress, right? Pierre-Luc Dubois takes a penalty, ill-advised, to be honest, on the back check, a hooking penalty. But what happened right before that was Nick Ehlers is building up speed through the neutral zone, doesn't see Dubois as a lane on the left wing. He's open. Dubois kills his speed, puts on the brakes at the blue line. Ehlers attacks the line by himself, right? There are things that are happening so far that show that maybe they don't know who's going to be where. And the play then, if you're Winnipeg, you have essentially, in my mind, you have 2 choices. You mix up that line, and maybe that means, spelling off Pierre-Luc Dubois and putting him on the 4th line, and then Matthew Perreault comes up for some energy sort of situation type of deal every once in a while. I don't think they're going to go that way, but here's an option. One option is mix up that line, and the other is just endure it and wait and believe that Scheifele's line can go and Lowry's line can go, and believe that Ehlers is too good and too much of a play driver and Paul Stastny is too responsible for them not to get their looks eventually, and maybe accept that chemistry isn't going to be 1,000% today, but maybe it's about, I guess they would be the sheltered line if they're line 3 in that situation, if there is such a thing as a sheltered line in the NHL against Toronto, and then look for them to build something and simply be patient. And I think that may be where Winnipeg lands.
We're shifting our focus from the Leafs to the Habs. I mean, it's certainly not impossible that the Habs might be the round 2 opponent. The Habs have what I'll describe as good forward depth, but they don't have the game breaker that Winnipeg has. They don't have the game breaker certainly that Edmonton had, and they don't have the game breaker that the Leafs have. So, how does that sort of lack of superstar top end talent on the Habs maybe factor into how the Jets would approach a series against the Montreal Canadiens, hypothetically?
I wonder if for the Jets, and I don't think this is real because I think there's just such a tremendous respective opponent. But if I wonder for the Jets if the focus against Montreal is against a playing style as much as it is against people. I love this line. I keep bringing it up. Pierre-Luc Dubois called the Montreal Canadiens forecheck. He said that they come out of nowhere sometimes. They're like bees. And that idea of bees just, I don't know, it tickles me somewhere just right. I think it's a great line. And for me, when Montreal is playing at its best, the speed and aggression of that forecheck is something that gives Winnipeg fits. And they didn't always have it together against the Jets so far this season, but they have it as a place that they can get to. And when you add, there's a certain amount of heavy hockey they can play with Josh Anderson, or Yoel Armia is having pardon me, you know who I mean. Armia? I would love to have learned Finnish back in the day.
Hey, you went to Finland? You were there?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, I can say Kiitos.
What does that mean?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, there you go. That's
And I think it's also the appropriate response to thank you, because you hear Patrick Laine say it back when people said it to him.
Now I want a taquito. I don't know where that just happened. I guess I'm filling the role of Ezzy right now.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a style of play Montreal can get to that can give Winnipeg fits, and I think that that's the thing to watch out for. And I think that possibly because of the coaching change, possibly because of some goaltending struggles that they had at different times this season, Montreal does get underestimated. But they're here in a Game 6 situation against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and part of that is goaltending, to be sure, but part of that is quite deserved from some of that 5-on-5 stuff as well. And I think that will be a style Winnipeg has to find an answer for if they play Montreal.
Murat Ates, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning, about 20 minutes before the top of the hour, talking about the Jets, talking about their potential round 2 opponent, be it the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Montreal Canadiens. The Leafs with a 3-2 series lead. Game 6 goes later tonight in front of fans in Montreal. What a nice change that will be for a Canadian division series.
Well, that's perfect segue, Drew, because Murat was sitting about 12 feet away from me to my right in that building for the last few games 3 and games 4. And one of the things we've talked about on this show was just the lack of energy. I mean, you get a triple overtime win, and I talked about it, the idea that the roof would have blown off that place. We're going to see this tonight. We're going to see 2,500 people in the Bell Center in Montreal taking in the game. Do you think there's almost I don't want to say an unfair advantage, but I mean, we haven't seen this. I saw someone tweet 444 days since we've seen live fans in a building other than a seltzer can here in Winnipeg. So I do wonder, like,
the seltzer can joins us at 10:30, by the way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, but what kind of pick me up do you think that's going to have for these teams? Because Paul Maurice has talked about it. The players have talked about it. Sure, they've adjusted. But, I was saying to Drew earlier, Murat, before you came on the show, you watched that Nashville-Carolina overtime with a full building practically. It's a different animal.
It is a different animal, and I think it will absolutely be an advantage for the home side that has that in their favor. I also don't think in a world where city-to-city, market-to-market COVID situations are different, like I don't think we could have expected the NHL to say everybody gets fans or nobody gets fans. I don't think that would have necessarily worked. And I don't know what the latest news in Montreal is on that front, but you know what? It just makes me sad that the latest news in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada are what they are, and that I believe that our province is the worst in terms of that situation, on the continent right now.
Shout out to the New York Times.
Yeah, thanks, New York. I guess where I'm going with that is just this idea that it makes me sad, and I cannot speak to the advantage that fans give without acknowledging the reason why the whiteout does not exist in Winnipeg right now. And you see the advertisements behind the net that say "get vaccinated." You heard Kevin Cheveldayoff, make a plea, and there's a video that's going around about that. But the truth is, we're in a situation where our ICU patients are being shipped to other provinces, where cardiac patients are being unable to be treated because resources are taking up in our hospitals. And if we want to get fans in the building and give Winnipeg that advantage, this is something that is incumbent on all of us, right? We all have a community role in it. And I'm sorry if that gets heavy, but I just remember thinking, and I think Dave, you walked by me at this time, I just remember Game 3, you have All of the Lights by Kanye West was playing, the Jets are warming up, and because we're in the building for the first time, I mean, I wasn't in Edmonton, I don't think you were in Edmonton, right? I mean, this was our first taste of playoff hockey this year, palpable in the building, and you can see the Jets are wired, you can see how fired up they are, there is a tension and an energy, and it's supposed to be loud, and the crowd is supposed to be there. Like, I shed a tear. I literally shed tears over the fact that the whiteout was not there, but there is a reason right now. And I wish that it could be different, but it's not. So sure, advantage Montreal, 2,500 people. I wish Winnipeg could be there in that same capacity.
Murat Ates covers the Winnipeg Jets for The Athletic. He does a great job each and every time he puts pen to paper. I guess if this was 1975, you might put pen to paper. But how about fingers to keyboard? How about that instead there, Murat? Always appreciate your time and insight. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, bud. We'll see you back at the rink sometime soon.
Yeah, can't wait. We're so lucky to do what we do. Thank you so much.
There he goes, Murat Ates, a good friend of the program. You can read more of Murat's work in The Athletic. Let's take our first commercial break of the morning. When we come back, we'll shift our focus to round 2. We'll talk about how the Jets match up against the Leafs, how the Jets match up against the Habs. We don't know the second round opponent. We know the Jets are going to be playing in it. We'll talk about that next. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours, and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve Sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Dave Minuk has done a hat change because apparently we do wardrobe changes on this show now. Does that mean after the next commercial break, I should come back wearing the wig again?
No, never bring the wig out.
Never bring. I got it right here.
No. Please,
no wig. No wig. You sure?
I've already got enough screenshots of you wearing that wig that'll last us for a lifetime, so we're good.
Okay, fine. No wig, Dave says.
Maybe I'll put on the IC 5950.
There you go. You're not a straight brim guy.
No.
At the best time.
3930s for me all the way.
Okay, well, there you go. So there's, in case anybody wanted to buy Dave a hat for his birthday, you now know what kind of hat that he wants, and it's a 3930, not a 5950. 100%. Saturday morning, we're back here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. This segment brought to you by our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, officially declared the funniest place in Winnipeg by Illegal Curve Hockey. For over 30 years, Rumors has been bringing Winnipeg the best in stand-up comedy. To purchase tickets or for a list of performers and showtimes, visit rumorscomedyclub.com. A reminder, each and every time any playoff game goes into overtime, as we saw the Jets and the Oilers do 3 different times, it is an opportunity for the hashtag ICOT pool, sponsored by Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. We've given away a ton of tickets to Rumors and a ton of prizes from Rumors so far in the first round of the playoffs. We hope to see that continue for the second round, so stay tuned to our Twitter feed at Illegal Curve. Anytime a game goes into overtime, hashtag ICOT pool. You can see the rules and everything else on our Twitter feed. It's always a fun little contest.
I was going to say, you and Ez were asleep, so I took over the ICOT pool for that Carolina-Nashville game.
Yeah.
Or maybe you weren't necessarily asleep.
I was asleep.
You were asleep at the wheel.
But no, I was asleep. There was no wheel. I was 100% asleep.
But as you just said in the chat, let's give away the wig to the next winner of the ICOT pool. It's not a bad idea. But it was nice to see, the person who won the pool said they were having they weren't having a particularly good day, and it was nice for them to get that boost. So it's not only do you get a boost from winning, it was nice to see that it made a difference in their day. Not necessarily yet, because of course Rumors isn't open yet, but they were anticipating the opportunity to get out and get some laughs. And in this environment, it's always good to laugh. So we usually just laugh at Ez. He's not here to laugh at. He's in the chat right now. But look, I think it's a fun contest. It's one we've been running. In conjunction, we used to do the IC game-winning goal for Jets games. I used to sit there.
That was back in year one.
Oh, I know. And I used to sit there after every game, like writing down off Twitter, like all the people who submitted a guess. It was comprehensive. It was time consuming. We loved doing it. We gave away. It's kind of funny. I always wonder, I'm like, where are all those IC toques that we gave away? I had, hundreds of IC toques in my house.
You see people walking around wearing an IC toque every now and then. Every
once in a while. Yeah. I mean, maybe not right now because it's getting nice out again, but,
it's a little warm.
But I will say, like, it was always funny to see people excited to win those and excited to wear them. So, well, again, people ask about merch. We're working on that. We've got some stuff in the queue when it comes to IC merch. But
we have a queue.
Well, something like that.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure it's just like my phone. But anyways, the point is that we're working on that because we know people have been asking about getting some IC gear, and we haven't done anything since the toques and since the aforementioned IC 5950.
There you go. So
from New Era, by the way.
Say that again.
From New Era.
Yeah, there we go. It was a good hat.
They're licensed hats. Yeah,
it is a licensed product. We're big time here.
As he says in the chat, he's excited for IC wigs.
Well, that's certainly something that we can consider going forward. I'm not
James
sure
James Robinson wants IC pajamas.
Well, I'll tell you what. If we keep doing post-game shows at 2 a.m, we'll have to do IC pajamas.
Well, I will say though, the one thing it's not a bad idea if people let us know what sort of thing that they are interested. I mean, traditionally it'll probably be shirts, hoodies, and hats. But if there are things that people want in particular, hit us up with that. You can either email us or you can david@illegalcurve.com or you can tweet at us. Yeah. So I think that's if people are interested, just let us know and we can. It's always good to have some sort of insight from the people who would be potentially buying it.
Exactly, from the potential customers here for the Illegal Curve merchandise. All right, let's get back talking about the Winnipeg Jets.
Sure.
It is sort of bizarre that we still sit here on Saturday after the Jets clinched on Monday night, Tuesday morning, that we still don't know who the Jets are going to play in round 2. And it's likely, I'm going to say likely to be the Toronto Maple Leafs, but admittedly, I would be more than happy to just laugh for a solid 3 hours if the Leafs managed to blow a 3-1 lead to the Montreal Canadiens. I would get, pardon me for my schadenfreude, but I would certainly enjoy that just for the hilarity that it would bring for everybody that isn't a Leafs fan. From your perspective, Dave, though, in terms of matchup, I think the Habs are clearly the quote-unquote easier matchup, but I don't think that the Jets match up poorly against the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Leafs obviously have more talent than the Habs, and the Leafs were a better team all year long than the Montreal Canadiens. But if the Jets can mitigate McDavid and Draisaitl, there's no reason to think that they can't also, to some extent, mitigate Matthews and Marner if it comes to that for a second round.
Well, and Paul Maurice was asked about this, that idea of planning for one particular team, because of course it's hard to turn your focus and do that. And we know that Pascal Vincent and his coaching staff are watching game film. I mean, that's one of the things that he talked about, was that idea that they'll be watching those games to provide, intelligence for the Jets coaching staff to let them know what they're seeing, what player tendencies, that sort of thing. It was interesting to hear Andrew Kopp say when the Edmonton series was on, watching Montreal, Toronto was a lot more casual. They were just he was watching hockey. Mm-hmm. Now he's watching it to see, once they had eliminated the Oilers, when he watched Game 5, he was going to be watching it to see player tendencies, things that he may be able to use to his advantage from both teams. And I think that's one of the things that you have to keep in mind. To your point, Drew, I mean, Montreal is not by any stretch of the imagination out of it. Toronto isn't. They've gotten the good goaltending. Campbell's been good, but I think it's a function of Josh Anderson he's a bit of a difference maker for me. Like the way he played against Winnipeg until he got injured. If you remember that one game, talked about it before, and he looked like he was going to dominate the Jets, and then he got injured. The Jets ended up going on to win the game, but he's a player who I think could be a bit of a difference maker for Montreal in that series. And look, you'd be clearly lying if you didn't think that the Montreal Canadiens would be the easier team because they don't have, to your point, which you made earlier in the show, the depth that the Toronto Maple Leafs have.
Yeah, the superstar talent.
That's right. That's what I mean. That's what, when I say depth, I mean like that high end talent to really kind of the Marners, the Matthews types. I mean, don't get me wrong. They've got some great young talent, like the Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, who finished off the 2-on-0 to win in OT. Mm-hmm. They're phenomenal young players, right? But they're very young and green. And I think that Montreal, we'll see. I mean, it seems like the overriding thought is that Toronto is still going to be able to pull this off tonight.
Yeah,
maybe the fans, the fans in La Belle Province will be a difference maker for Montreal.
Boy, did this! I mean, look, if Montreal wins tonight, boy, did the sphincters get tight in Toronto for Game 7, because I mean, the collapse that it would put to shame, almost every other collapse that they've had and every other failure that they've had over the last number of years. Since going back to the Boston game where they blew it in the third period. I mean, I see glow in the dark condoms. Joe P, you are a deranged, dirty. Nobody wants that.
He shoots
idea in their mind.
Think about it. It markets itself. He shoots
I'll tell you what, it might market itself, but I'd like to see the reaction of the other person on the other end when your partner brings out a condom with the IC logo on it, assuming it would have the IC logo on it and not our faces, because really it's really disturbing in all different ways at that point in time. You
just take it to a new level of low.
No question. But I mean, the Jets' record against the Leafs, we know 4-4-2, and there were some great highs in that 4-4-2. We remember that Saturday night game where they went into Toronto and they beat the Leafs handily in front of the entire country. And I think that they move into a tie with the Leafs for top spot, or a point behind the Leafs in the top spot. The end of the 3-game series or the 4-game series, whatever it was in Toronto. But there were lows against the Leafs. We remember, the Scheifele being benched game during when the Jets were mired in the losing streak. That was certainly as low as it gets. Against the Montreal Canadiens, the Jets had better success. They were 6-3 against the Montreal Canadiens this year. But there was the great high of the 5-0 victory in Montreal. I think also on a Saturday night, if I recall correctly, the first time any Winnipeg Jets team has ever shut out the Montreal Canadiens in Montreal. But then there were also the lows, that 7-1 game. Now, that game you could sort of erase, pretend it was on the whiteboard and just erase it because it was such an anomaly at that point in the Jets season that there wasn't a lot to take away from that. But, as much as the Jets had more success against Montreal, I don't think it is as one-sided as that 6-3 record would indicate. You look at it here, I mean, the Jets had 31 goals for against the Habs and 28 goals against. You factor in the 5-0 win and the 7-1 loss, and you can see that when the Jets, played the Habs, it was fairly close. Those games were not, dominant one side or the other. The record is a bit misleading, sort of like the Jets record against the Oilers proved to not mean a damn thing come playoff time.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think what it comes down to, and we talked about it, was the Jets were playing, especially during that losing streak, like a group of individuals. There was not a lot of team play, and I was harping on it like a broken DVD. Was that the idea of
skipping DVD or whatever it was?
Yeah, exactly. No, I think, like I said, the Moose, you'd watch them and they play, on that 13-game point streak, they were playing a team game. They played for each other, with each other, and there was no individual play. Paul Stastny, a veteran of 1,000 NHL games, said, this isn't that you weren't seeing that from this team. That's what he said during the losing streak. And I think what ultimately we're going to see, what we have seen, was that buy-in. And I think that was the major difference from this Jets team against the Oilers, was that there was that buy-in for the team game. And it's not going to be 100% perfect. You're going to see instances where it's not working. But the point is, if you're a Jets fan and you're taking, I would say throw out what you saw in the regular season, because this team appears to be adhering, again, not necessarily perfectly, but adhering to the game plan that has been put in place by the coaching staff. And I want to say yesterday in Paul Stastny's available on a little site called illegalcurve.com that you can listen, which you can listen to. He talked about that. He talked about that idea of guys buying in, and the idea of the coaching staff creating a plan that they were able to execute and adjust. And that's one of the words he used, was adjust. And I think that's what we've seen this staff do. And they often, including on this show, get criticized sometimes by not adjusting, by keeping things the same, by trying to take a square peg and put it into a round hole. And I thought our boy Bruce CBC will be happy I got that one right this time. But I think it's one of those situations, Drew, that, like I said, you've got guys playing well together. You've got the Morrissey and DeMello pairing that's playing well. Morrissey stepped up his game. Nobody's questioning that. His game has hit that next level from what we've seen previously.
A small sample size. So, I mean, that's the caveat I would put on it, but it is, reassuring and very nice for Winnipeg Jets organization and Winnipeg Jets fans for a guy like Josh Morrissey, who had been sort of the target of a lot of slings and arrows this year, to bounce back in the manner that he did against the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, it's not a guarantee that this is the new standard, but you can see how much more comfortable a guy like Josh Morrissey is, playing with Dylan DeMello. He plays, when you're not worried about your D partner, and you can focus on your game as opposed to focusing on your game and trying to pick up some of the slack. And that's no disrespect intended to Tucker Poolman, as Morrissey's primary D partner all year long. But it just goes to show that, look, when has he been at his best? He was at his best with Jacob Trouba, when they were a partner, prior to the trade. And he's been at his best with Dylan DeMello, two players he didn't have to worry about, and he didn't have to try and carry, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and I think, I go back to Tucker Poolman and Logan Stanley as a pairing, and I think they have themselves shown that they are capable of playing together. I talked about this when we saw that they were going to be paired up together. These guys have 29 games together in the American Hockey League with the Manitoba Moose, a couple seasons back. So their muscle memory together is significant. It's not something that they have to try and form a chemistry. There's that familiarity already. And I think for Josh Morrissey, to your point, Drew, he's been able to find that chemistry with Dylan DeMello. Dylan DeMello is like that. Like we've analogized him all year long. He's like the pony that walks out with a thoroughbred on the way to the race to calm the horse down. And that seems to be what Dylan DeMello's game has been for Josh Morrissey, to your point. And I think that the biggest question mark for the Jets was, can they play this team game? Not just on the defense, because we knew the defense, the forwards were going to have to play better. That was one of the keys. We knew the Lowry line was going to be committed to defense. We knew Paul Stastny's committed to defense. Would the top line commit to playing better defense? Well, I think we've got that question answered. We know what the fourth line brings in terms of commitment to defense. So that is what defense wins championships, quite frankly. I mean, it's not sexy. It's not exciting. People want to see goals. But at the end of the day, you have to play good team defense. And when you can play good team defense as a collective five-man unit, and you have Connor Hellebuck, to the point Murat made when we were interviewing him, saying it's not all sunshine and roses. They were, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, they got their chances. But when they got their chances, and you have Connor Hellebuck playing the way he is, .950 save percentage, obviously only 4 games, but when you have that guy behind you with the confidence that he has, this Jets team has made themselves a harder out than a lot of people gave them credit for.
Absolutely. No question about that. Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. It's brought to you by Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty, official realtors of Illegal Curve Hockey. When 95% of your clients come via referral, it shows your commitment to honesty, integrity, and a total dedication to client satisfaction. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, come shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia online at zappiagroup.com. So, Dave, looking at the forward matchup for a potential round 2, we know how the Jets ended round 1, and that, of course, is with Kopp, Lowry, and Appleton really getting the bulk of the matchup against the McDavid and Draisaitl line. We asked Murat about this when he joined us about 30 or so minutes ago. Would you sort of stay status quo on that line, getting against the Matthews, Marner, Hyman line for the Toronto Maple Leafs, assuming that that line would stick together and assuming the Leafs would win? And so conversely, if it's the Habs in round 2, are you less concerned about matchups because the Habs do not have that that superstar game-breaking talent that the Oilers and the Leafs have?
Yeah, I think there's no question about it. I think that the line matching, the overthinking sometimes that happens. We saw it with Dave Tippett a little bit, in that series. I think you sometimes tend to overthink these things, but with Paul Maurice, again, it goes back to the comment I just made, that you have that confidence that your team is going to be able to collectively do this. And there's no question about it. Paul Maurice has the most faith in that Adam Lowry line, Andrew Kopp line, at Mason Appleton. Those guys are his shutdown group who can occasionally contribute offense. So to me, that's if you're going to task a line on this team with shutting down Austin Matthews, it's likely going to be that line. But the key is, based on the way the Scheifele-Connor-Wheeler line played in round one, you're not feeling that lack of confidence in them to do it again. And I think that is what's key. And we knew Blake Wheeler was going to be committed to playing in that style. There wasn't a question. But was it that, guys who are offensively minded, Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, very honest, by the way, by Neil Pionk when he was asked in his availability whether he saw Kyle Connor in that triple overtime, whether he saw Kyle Connor and made that pass. And he said, I'm going to be honest with you. I was just trying to get the puck out of our zone. And then he goes, I had a thought that the forward might be high at that point and have a chance, but really I didn't see Kyle Connor. So an honest moment from Neil Pionk. Someone responded to my tweet. They said skill and integrity. And I said, yeah, that there's definitely no question. He didn't pretend like he made a beautiful pass with intention there. But
at that point in the third overtime, all you're cared about is getting the puck out of the potential danger area as much as humanly possible. It worked out, a series of bounces, a series of inches, and that was a good one where the Jets just happened to have Kyle Connor still, trudging back from the offensive zone, trying to make his way back. You could see just nobody had any jump in their legs at that point in the game, as you would expect. It just worked out fortuitously for the Winnipeg Jets at that point in time.
Yeah, but I ultimately, to get back to the question you asked, it's that idea of not having a lack of faith in your forward group to be able to handle who their opponent is. So you're feeling more confident to be able to say, well, can this Scheifele line, if they need to, when you're not going to have last change, equate themselves well against a Matthews line? And it would seem that the answer, based on what they did against McDavid and Draisaitl, and with no disrespect to Matthews and Marner, they're not McDavid and Draisaitl. I think everybody's taking McDavid and Draisaitl every day of the week. And again, I'm not maligning those guys because I think they're both phenomenal hockey players. But I'm just saying, let's be realistic. You've got those guys are the two best in the NHL in terms of what they do. So I think that you're less afraid if you're Paul Maurice, based on what you've seen from your team's collective buy-in, to have to worry about line matching. And I think that'll actually be better for Paul Maurice because, like I said, I think coaches sometimes get into their own head about what they need to do, and you saw it, right? Like Paul Maurice was asked about it in terms of the overtime, and he didn't use Nate Thompson, he didn't use Trevor Lewis. He used Matthew Perreault occasionally to get him in, to get, because he knows the energy level that he brings. But again, and he said, I was probably he expected, because I think the Oilers had two straight power plays. And he had said, well, there felt like there was a chance that we'd have a PK coming up. And he'd need to have Nate Thompson ready to go. So he was thinking about throwing him out. Anyways, Kyle Connor ended it, so it didn't really make a difference. But the point was that from this team, if they played the way they played, and it wasn't always perfect, and that Oilers series was close, but if you play this way, you're not feeling that need to be as line matchy as possible. Again, if you have the opportunity, you're always going to have the Lowry line up against those guys because that's your shutdown line. So why wouldn't you want them to, quote, shut down the opposition's best? But I think if you can see the Wheeler line playing collective group defense, then you're not as concerned about it.
You're exactly right. I mean, that's the beauty of the situation that Paul Maurice is uniquely in that they have, with your top three lines, you're really not as concerned about the matchup. And even the fourth line a number of times got very difficult matchups that, had me sort of holding my breath a little bit in the course of the series against the Oilers. But ultimately it didn't it didn't cost them. And you know that it's not a great situation for Lewis, Perreault, and Thompson to be matched up against the best of the opposition, but they're going to be responsible in how they try and defend that. It's not what you want. It's not ideal. It does happen, but it's not. It's not a absolute catastrophe, apoplectic catastrophe for the Winnipeg Jets when it occurs. And you look at the Oilers against the Leafs particularly, and I mean, look, the Leafs are a very good hockey team. They were the best team in the North Division all year long, so I'm not going to say take anything away from them. But the truth is, the Joe Thornton has struggled immensely in this first round against the Montreal Canadiens. He is more of a name than he is a significant contributing force, certainly again in this first round. That's not to say he can't turn it around against the Jets, but Joe Thornton has struggled. The speed is gone, we know that, but the hands were really struggling, which is just a factor of fatigue. You got an older player who's played a lot of hockey games in the regular season in a compacted window. He's played a lot of hockey games in the overtime or in the playoffs so far, but he just hasn't looked like the Joe Thornton we're used to looking. I don't expect he's going to be out of the Leafs lineup, but this Leafs team right now, no John Tavares, and we don't know when he's back, and I am surprised that he was skating as quickly as he was, and that's a great sign for the Toronto Maple Leafs, especially given the traumatic injury that occurred. I mean, was it just last week, if I'm not mistaken? Was it last Thursday? So, I mean, 9 days ago, he's back, he's skating, he hasn't taken contact. It's unlikely that he's going to play in the first round, the rest of the first round, however long that lasts. But it's not impossible that we won't see him in round 2 against the Jets if it gets to that point in time. And you look at, Nick Foligno, who's now injured for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We don't know when he's going to come back, but the Leafs roster without Tavares and without Foligno is it's a dangerous roster, but it is way less dangerous than when those two guys are at full strength, and especially Tavares. I mean, his loss you can't overstate the impact of his loss and what it does in moving guys up the lineup. A guy like Galchenyuk and Kerfoot, without having the Tavares shelter that he provides as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question those injuries are catastrophic, and I think sometimes you can survive injuries. The Jets obviously started the playoffs without Nikolai Ehlers or Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Yeah.
And we saw other guys step up, and Dominic Palinato, of course, got the goal in game 1. Very Joe Morrow-esque, if you will. And I think it's one of those situations where if you're the Leafs, you're concerned. You have to be concerned because, you're 100% right, Drew. Seeing Tavares skating is a good sign because we didn't know what to expect, but because, they did diagnose it as a concussion, right? So there's no certainty in terms of a return, but it's a good sign for him. The sign that he's back on the ice is obviously positive. And then Nick Foligno. I mean, you brought him specifically for one thing, which is the playoffs, and you don't have him right now. And I think we've got to give Campbell credit. He's played very well in the net. I think his, and it would be a very interesting considering how close, Campbell and Connor Hellebuck are, 2 Michigan guys. Would be an interesting kind of head-to-head series. Be interesting to see how that impacts their relationship moving forward. But there's no question about it that it's impacting this team. And to your point, Drew, you made earlier in the show, if these guys lose tonight, there's going to be some clutching of sticks because Game 7, all bets are off.
Clutching of sticks and clutching of pearls. We'll talk way more about the Winnipeg Jets and their potential round 2 opponent. Let's head to break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Justin Cuthbert. We'll talk to him about the Leafs and the Habs. We'll talk to him about his impressions on the Winnipeg Jets. Lots more Jets talk to come. It's a Saturday morning. You're joining us live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours, and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve Sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. As you can see, we're pleased to be joined on the program by Justin Cuthbert of Yahoo Sports. He covers the NHL. I am your host, Drew Mandel. Dave Minuk also with me. Justin, good morning. Nice to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure, Justin. Obviously brought you on. Talk a little bit about the Stanley Cup playoffs, talk about the North Division, talk about the Winnipeg Jets. And let's start with the Jets because they are the hometown team here. I got to say, I love your background there. What is that, a Messier and a Lemieux there?
Yeah.
Messier and Lemieux. Yeah. I pride myself on making this corner look as good as it can, I guess.
And that is a quality corner you got going on there. From your perspective, Justin, I'm sure you've spent a lot of time watching all the series that have happened in the North Division, and of course that includes the Jets' sweep of the Edmonton Oilers. What was your biggest takeaway, if you will, from the Jets' 4-game victory over the Oilers?
I mean, I think it was shocking for me, like it was for probably most people outside of Winnipeg who might not have been paying as much attention to what the Jets were doing. But to me, it was a major surprise because we saw, how the Winnipeg Jets limped into the series, how they didn't play their best over the last, probably 6 weeks, 2 months. But when you dive into the numbers of those last 6 weeks, they seem to be transitioning to something similar to what they wanted to show the Edmonton Oilers, which was cutting down on events, trying to be a defensively responsible team. And it didn't really work for them as they limped down the stretch, but everything that they were sort of planning for, it seems, all of a sudden worked. Not to say that they dominated the series by any means, but they were able to solve what is really a pretty rudimentary puzzle, which is you shut down those two best players. If you can play strong defense against those two, well, it opens up a world for you outside of those 20 to 25 minutes that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are going to play. So, it's not what the style of play didn't exactly suit how I think the Jets are built. I mean, they're not a dominant defensive team in terms of personnel, but if you commit to something and if you commit to and everybody's on board and it's pretty well understood what the intentions are, you can beat a team that doesn't exactly have all that strength throughout its lineup and relies exclusively on two guys.
Justin, we're still waiting to find out who the Jets' opponent will be in the next round. Of course, that game 6 is tonight in Montreal. What do you see? How do you see this series playing out? Do you see that Montreal's gaining momentum?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not sure that that game wasn't more of an anomaly, but I do find it almost interesting that the Leafs are in the position that they're in, or Montreal's in the position that it's in, because really the Canadians have gotten exactly what they wanted in this series, which is to shut down Austin Matthews, to use Phil Deneau, Shea Weber, and Ben Sherratt to limit all the damage, just like a Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, from that number one line with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. Only one goal between them, only really one good game between them out of 5. So that brings it to a battle of the depth. And if you look at the depth, it should favor Montreal. I mean, you've got Nick Suzuki outside of that, Anderson out of that top line. You got Tyler Toffoli, who scored a bunch of goals this year outside of that top line. Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Like, they've got a pretty good, solid depth after that top unit, which is doing its job. And then you compare that to what the Leafs have, and it's, okay, William Nylander's playing out of his mind. That's great. He's probably been the difference in the series. John Tavares isn't here anymore. Okay, so who else is there? Alex Kerfoot, he stepped up, but, Alex Kerfoot versus Nick Suzuki, like, you like that matchup, right? And then you go all the way down the list, and then all of a sudden you're at Jason Spezza pretty quickly, because guys like Thornton, Simmons, Mikheyev, they're not really doing anything for you offensively. They can shut down another line. But if this is turned into a battle of the depths, and it's, you can take Phil Deneau and Austin Matthews and create a wash, I think Montreal would be in this series, and they certainly are. But maybe they haven't forced their way as much as you maybe think they should by the way that they've shut down Matthews and Marner.
Justin Cuthbert is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. Justin covers the NHL for Yahoo Sports. Obviously, Justin, tonight's Game 6 back in Montreal, the first game in Canada that'll be in front of fans. I think it's probably overstating it to say that the fans themselves, and 2,500 of them, will be a difference maker. But just from an observer's standpoint, won't it be refreshing to watch a game in Canada that has fans in the stands?
Yeah, definitely. And 2,500 fans, I'm not sure if they can actually compete with the crowd noise they pump into the Bell Center, because they do a pretty good job amplifying the sound in there. But we saw when there was just the start of fans being in the stands in the States that it did have a difference. Like, it created a bit of an atmosphere. It probably had an effect on the game and the players just a little bit. And I think it will to a certain extent. But I've heard that the tickets are like crazy prices, like $1,000 a pop. I think they would probably start with, their families first. And the families can certainly make noise. But are the people that are willing to shell out $1,000 per ticket going to be as rowdy as maybe you need them to be, or as rowdy as we've seen in certain areas? I definitely think it'll be a help. I think it'll still feel incomplete, like these playoffs have felt throughout since the start of the season, really, for the North Division. But I think it'll give it a little extra pop. We might be bigging it up a little bit more than it'll actually be, but I certainly think it'll be a welcome sight. And for the 2,500 that get to be in attendance, I mean, kind of part of history, because it's been over 14 months, I think, since we've seen fans in the stands at a Canadian hockey game, and it'll be a refreshing sight to see, that's for sure.
Justin Cuthbert, our guest, Saturday morning. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Justin covers the NHL for Yahoo Sports.
Well, Justin, in Winnipeg, there was celebration, but in Edmonton, there was a post-mortem. So what was your big takeaway from things in Edmonton, and what the state of that franchise looks like right now?
Yeah, I mean, my big takeaway is that we basically can't even use the season's worth of data from them, because they're clearly a team that in a regular season, the guys, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, can carry them and create them into something that they're really not. But if you look at the 4 games, and again, it wasn't like a whitewash, and it wasn't complete dominance from the Jets, 3 overtime games, all very close. If you look at all the underlying data, it might suggest that the Oilers were the better team for the majority of it, which is, certainly an argument. But other than Connor, Leon, and Darnell Nurse, who emerged as an absolute star this year and might make the Olympic team, I don't think they have anything beyond that. I really don't think they have anything to build on. Their best players beyond that would be Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, rather, and Tyson Barrie. At least played good 5-on-5 minutes and ran the power play and put up a boatload of points. And they're going to be free agents. And you just run down the line and it gets so thin so quickly. Now they're talking about bringing Mike Smith back, and that's fine. But this was an outlier season for him. And are you going to expect the same when he's turning 40 this year? It's only okay to bring back Mike Smith if you're not bringing back Mikko Koskinen, and he's got at least a year left, I think maybe 2. So problems at every position, really. And problems that 2 players, 2 of the best in the world, can cover up when the games aren't quite as meaningful, when the Jets aren't quite fully committed to playing 100% defensively sound structure. That's not what you see in the regular season. It's like what you see from teams throughout the regular season, because that's just not how hockey is played in the regular season. The brand of hockey favors Connor and Leon and the Oilers in the regular season, but it flips and it changes, and they just don't have any answer when there's actual commitment to detail against those two guys, and you're able to limit them. If you're expecting anyone else to win you a game in Edmonton, it's just not going to happen. So they need to make widespread changes to that roster. They're going to be bringing in some new guys. They have a ton of money to spend, but it's going to take an immense amount of creativity for them to get to the spot that they need to get to. And Ken Holland, despite his success, you don't think of him as a creative genius, and that's what they need. They need someone who's gonna turn over every rock in order to find a small way to improve the roster. Like, I think about what the Penguins did with Jeff Carter. He's not like, no one was thinking about that. No one thought they could bring on Jeff Carter at $5 million, but retained into that number 3 hole. Suddenly you got a Jordan Staal again. That's the type of stuff that works. And that's the type of creativity I've just not seen from the Edmonton Oilers ever. And I think Edmonton Oilers fans should be a little bit concerned that we might not see that this summer to the extent that we need to, because they need to do everything possible to get more talent around them.
Justin Cuthbert, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. You're watching, you're chatting, you're viewing the show on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms. You know, Justin, after the Jets dispatched the Oilers in 4 very close games, I found it very interesting, the hand-wringing that was occurring about, you know, how the games are called in the playoffs and how the officiating standard changes from the regular season to the playoffs. And I don't necessarily disagree that occurs, but, you know, why is anybody surprised, I guess, at this point in time that there are 2 different rule books in the NHL and that the powers that be within the league have no reason or have no impetus, it seems, to want to change that?
Yeah, I'm not really sure why people are surprised that this is happening, because we see it all the time. And I guess if you're going to ever inspire change, you need to continue to be loud about something, or it's not going to happen. I think the more frustrating thing, because we kind of understand that it does change from the regular season to the playoffs, is that there seems to be inconsistency from series to series. Like, I watch, I'm trying to watch as much as possible, but throwing on Carolina and Nashville, and it seems like there's a penalty, not every shift, but a good amount of time. There seems to be penalties going back and forth, maybe more for Carolina than Rod Brendamore was, too excited about. But I just feel like it's impossible for Connor McDavid to go 4 games without drawing a penalty. It doesn't make any sense to me, at least unless no one's touching him. And clearly they were doing their best to get in his way at every turn. So that doesn't make too much sense to me. And there was only 1 penalty, I think, in Game 5 between Montreal and Toronto, and it didn't play out that way. And I saw Riley Smith I forget who it was in front of the net when the game was still in the balance, Game 7 between Minnesota and Vegas, and there was no call, and that was a clear scoring chance. Like, that type of stuff doesn't make too much sense to me. I think you can limit the ticky-tack stuff, but when something literally eliminates a scoring chance or prevents what could be a scoring chance from developing, I think you have to call it by the book as close to possible. I get that you want to cut it down. You want the players to decide it 5-on-5 by themselves, have the referees stay out as much as possible. But in the process of trying to stay out of the game, they become more of the game. And that's really the problem.
I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Dave Minuk is with me. Our guest is Justin Cuthbert, Yahoo Sports NHL analyst. We're talking about the North Division. We're talking about the NHL playoffs. It is Saturday morning, the bottom of hour number 2 of the program.
Justin, it's funny. We've been so focused. We've had such blinders here in Winnipeg on what's going on with the Jets and what's going on in the North Division. You kind of forget about the rest of the NHL. And we've talked to guys, and I said it's like covering the KHL. It may as well be a completely different league right now from what we're watching here in the North. But I think one of the things that I really kind of came to appreciate was that, and you talked about it a little bit in terms of the fans that are going to be in Montreal tonight. When I watched that overtime between Toronto and Montreal last game versus the Carolina-Nashville overtime, what a disparity it was between having a full building versus not. And I was in the arena for the Jets triple overtime game, and there were maybe 50 of us in the building. It's such a different feeling versus what you see with fans. So what kind of lift? I know you said it won't match in terms of what the Bell Center, the type of noise they're bringing in, but how much of an impact is that going to have? And is that almost an unfair advantage in the sense that in Toronto, I believe they still can't have fans. Here in Winnipeg, we know they still can't have fans. But now they're in Montreal, they're going to allow them to have that fan base. So do you think that's going to create a bit of an unfair advantage in terms of, the overall atmosphere for the home team?
Well, I don't know if Montreal is going to have a terribly huge advantage, but I know whichever Canadian team does go through and ends up in a different barn is going to be seriously disadvantaged just in the series alone. Like, it is a different world having 18,000 screaming half in the bag fans cheering on your team and chanting against you. I do frankly worry about whichever team that gets through is just it's gonna be like trying to catch up to a 100-mile-an-hour fastball when you've been seeing changeups for the entire year. I think there's going to be a serious learning curve for either the Jets, the Leafs, or the Canadians if when they get to that point, when that team does get to that point. I've heard rumors of what might happen. I still think we're waiting. We're close to the deadline here from the Canadian government and the NHL, talking until I believe June 1st. So it could be early this week when we actually know. But it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, they're going to be playing in either a bland barn or a barn that is just trying to manufacture some sort of fan presence. And that fan presence might come from the other side. So I do think that I don't know if Montreal is going to have that much of an advantage in Game 6 on Saturday night, because I think the Leafs will relish that. I think Leaf fans will get there as well. And maybe it's a bit of a wash with just some background noise. But when that first Canadian team steps into Colorado or Carolina or whatever it is, it's going to be a different experience and something that they're not used to, certainly because they haven't experienced it in the last 14 months. Now, it doesn't mean that they're going to lose the series or not or whatever, but I think that, coupled with the fact that these teams that are playing in other divisions that are going to get through might be at a higher level than we know compared to what's going on in the Canadian division, at least at the top. It could be a rude experience for the first Canadian team that does get through and plays in those first two games, likely on the road. It's possible that Toronto's at home, but that would help. If they could get into the series before they have to go on the road, that would certainly be a benefit, because stepping in that first night is going to be a whole different world.
Last question for you, Justin. I mean, and to your point there about, we've been, and Dave mentioned it earlier, my focus, our focus, most of Canada's focus has been strictly on the North Division so far this year. Now, with the playoffs, you watch a little more hockey, you watch a little bit of what's going on in the other divisions. You're looking at the Canadian teams left, the Jets, the Leafs, the Habs. How do you think that, they match up, just watching it through your television set, against some of those elite teams that are playing down south? I mean, Tampa and Carolina, those are two elite hockey teams. Colorado and Vegas, we know those are two elite hockey teams. You underestimate the Bruins and the Islanders at your own peril. Still, the attitude was that the North Division winner is going to be the weakest of the four. Have you seen anything that changes your mind to that effect?
I don't know if they'll be the weakest of the four. I definitely think they'll be in the bottom two. I mean, Colorado, Vegas, Carolina, and Tampa, I think, are sort of emerged as the best four teams in the playoffs. And it's sort of unfortunate that they're going to play each other here. But it shows, it displays the fact that we're going to get some good series in the second round. Mm-hmm. But what it also shows, I think the Canadian teams would be able to compete. I mean, Nashville gave Carolina problems, and I think Carolina is a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. But when I do think they get to that point, if they have to match up with one of those teams, it's going to be very difficult. I think Colorado's sort of on a different level. I think Vegas is close, and they're going to make it a series, and maybe they're going to make it seem like, okay, maybe that disparity isn't that big because, hey, Colorado might be pushed in the second round. But I think Tampa's showing that professional, postseason know-how. I think Carolina might be a little bit underneath the Tampa Bay Lightning in terms of talent, even though they outperformed them in the regular season. But if Toronto or Winnipeg, I don't think Winnipeg can drop Boston. But if Toronto and Boston play each other, I think it's going to be a series. If the New York Islanders play one of those teams, I think it's going to be a series. But if you get thrown in against Colorado in round one, which I think would be the case with the Jets, it would. I think they would have less points than the Islanders. So that would be a rude awakening. I think the best chance for a Canadian team to have success would be the Maple Leafs taking that number 2 or number 3 seed and having a seat at the table, at least against either Carolina or Tampa. But in any situation, I think the Canadian team in the third round will be seriously in the underdog status, I'll say.
Well, there's one team left to be determined for round 2. That's between the Leafs and the Habs. Game 6 goes tonight, and if the Leafs lose that one, it'll be an epic hand-wringing for Game 7 come Monday night back in Toronto. Justin Cuthbert covers the NHL for Yahoo Sports. Justin, appreciate your time. Appreciate your insight. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
A lot of fun, guys. Enjoy the game tonight.
Take care. There he goes, Justin Cuthbert of Yahoo Sports, joining us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Dave Minuk, let's keep our look going at round 2 from the Winnipeg Jets perspective. I should mention, of course, first that this segment is brought to you by Boston Pizza. Boston Pizza has the perfect starting lineup tonight with the BP Game Day Meal Deal. Choose 2 of your favorite medium gourmet pizzas like the Spicy Pierogi and the Mighty Meteor, along with a triple order of Boston's famous wings, all for $54.99. It serves 5 to 6 people. Available for takeout and delivery only at bostonpizza.com or download the MyBP app. So we talked about the forward matchup, Dave, and you look at the defense matchup for the Winnipeg Jets, and I think that much like we've seen, for the most part this year against the Leafs, maybe a little less so against the Habs, but the Jets defense will be considered a little bit weaker than their opponent in round number 2. Maybe the bottom pairing for the Habs concerns me because for whatever reason, Dominic Ducharme has not been using Alexander Romanov this playoffs, even though I think he's better than both John Merrill and Eric Gustafsson. But that's a separate issue altogether. But I think what the Jets defense has shown in round 1 is that if they continue to play with that 5-man unit that we saw have such success oftentimes against the Oilers, they can mitigate whatever perceived weaknesses they do have on the back end.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think we talked about that throughout the course of this program. I think that people wanted to pile on the Jets D and say that, they stunk and that they're no good and they can't hold their own. And that, I guess that's a fair take that you can have. It's not necessarily an accurate one. And I think we saw that because the Jets were no longer playing like 2 defensemen and 3 forwards on a line. And the forwards were supporting the defense. And when you have that happen, when you have, like Murat said in the first segment of the show, or the first hour of the show, 4 guys on the line, the team's backing each other up. You're not leaving guys hanging out to dry. You're not weak back checking. Well, that's a huge benefit to your defense. And so we've seen guys, Logan Stanley stepped up. He's getting penalty kill minutes in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I really just, I was thinking back to a conversation we had when we were still on the radio during a call-in segment, and someone asked if Logan Stanley was a bust. And I said, no, he's not a bust. I said, he's a project. He's a player who's going to take some time. Yeah. Now, and I always had faith he'd be an NHLer. I mean, I'm not suggesting that I had some sort of great insight. I just watched him in the AHL. I felt like he would eventually make the transition. I will not pretend to think that I had any thought that he was going to do what he did. I thought he'd get into some games. I thought he'd be a semi-regular. I didn't think he'd establish himself the way he has. So, and that's on him. That's on the good work he did. Paul Maurice was asked about it in media availability this week, and he said it was a lot of it he felt was what he did over the summer, a lot of the training he did with Mark Scheifele, a couple of Kitchener guys training together. So, and I think that's one of the things that we weren't expecting. And I was thinking to the idea of, Logan Stanley, the hit on Josh Archibald levels on Logan Stanley being the difference. And I thought to myself, if you would have told me Logan Stanley would be the reason the Jets end up defeating the Edmonton Oilers, I wouldn't have believed it. But
sorry for interrupting you. And I meant to bring this up earlier in the show when you mentioned the Archibald hit. I mean, look, Archibald hit obviously had a huge impact on Game 3, but I don't think you can overstate the impact it had on Game 4. With Archibald being suspended and being out of the lineup, that meant that Dave Tippett, when he was running his bench during the third overtime, and I thought he did a pretty lousy job at running his bench, only relying on basically, 6 forwards. Had Archibald been in the Oilers lineup for that Game 4, he would have been relied on. So again, the hit on Stanley obviously gave the Jets a boost in Game 3. But you can't underestimate the impact it had on Game 4 as well, particularly in the overtime periods where Dave Tippett didn't have any other options that he trusted. Prior to the hit on Stanley or the attempted wounding on Stanley, Tippett trusted Archibald. Take him out of the lineup, and you saw that Tippett just didn't have anybody that he trusted for that overtime period, and that's another player out of their rotation when your rotation is pretty thin to begin with.
Yeah, and
I just wanted to get that in there.
No, and I think it's a completely valid point. I just think, like I said, nobody would have anticipated that Logan Stanley, Tucker Pullman, which is exactly where I've said Tucker Pullman should be playing, as your third pairing defenseman, and Forbert and Pionk, those guys have a lot of familiarity, and then you got Morrissey and DeMello. So right now, this Jets defense, nobody's saying that they're a top defense in the NHL, but when the forwards are playing collectively like they could, like they did, if they commit in that manner, and if they have that mindset, and there's no reason to think that they won't, will they be perfect in it? Absolutely not. People are human, they make mistakes. But with that mindset, when you see that you can win games that way, it's not the prettiest always, but when you can see that you've got the best goaltender or one of the best goaltenders in the NHL,
yeah,
and you have a mindset, a game plan, a blueprint for how to have success, and don't think they're not watching these games against the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs and seeing how Matthews and Marner's have been limited. We heard Justin talk about it. 1 goal in 5 games.
It's only for Matthews. Marner still, I think I saw a stat. It's been 16 playoff games since Mitch Marner last scored a goal. That is hard to believe. That's an anomaly way more than it is, I think, anything else. But you remember the criticism that Nikolai Ehlers took before he could score in the playoffs, and we know that's obviously not an ongoing issue after he scored in overtime in Game 3 and was certainly impactful once he returned to the Jets lineup. But Mitch Marner has got to be feeling pressure for the Toronto Maple Leafs, having not been able to score a goal in, like I said, whatever it was, 16 or so games since he last scored in the playoffs for the Leafs.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And if you don't have your top guns going and your depth isn't producing, well, you're in trouble. And you're getting good goaltending, which is obviously, we've seen that with the Jets sometimes when there's guys who aren't necessarily, getting it done. But I think what we've seen from this Jets team collectively is that you can get offense from any of those top 3 lines realistically. And obviously Matthew Perreault, when he gets onto the second power play unit, or 1A, 1B line, a power play. But I think what it comes down to for the Jets, because it was going to be the big question mark, would have been collective team defense and individually how these defensemen would step up their game and play. And we've seen Josh Morrissey, he's getting rave reviews for what he was able to do. And people could lament the fact that there weren't penalties called, but for the most part, it went both ways. Connor McDavid, for sure there was interference on him, but there were other times where I was in the building, I'm watching, I saw things happening. I thought to myself, how's that not a penalty? There was a delay of game that wasn't called. That was clearly a delay of game. There are a lot of instances where the refs put the whistles away and allowed the game to unfold in front of them as opposed to trying to manage it.
I think it is a little silly that the standard of officiating changes from period to period, game to game, and series to series. But you know who can stop that or who can demand changes to it? And it's not, by the way, the columnists who all of a sudden jumped out of their chairs to lament that McDavid and Draisaitl were being hooked and hollered. It's the general managers of the NHL. Any change that happens in the NHL starts with the general managers. It starts with the presidents of the franchises. It starts with the team. So, every time somebody writes, and God help them, stop writing about it. Find something better to do to write about, the fact that there's 3-point games in the NHL. Yeah, we know there's 3-point games in the NHL. We know that it doesn't make any sense that, 3 points are awarded in game A and only 2 points are awarded in game B. Mm-hmm. The horse is out of the barn until the league and the general managers want to change it. And it's the exact same with the officiating standard. You want consistent officiating? It starts with the general managers saying, we demand officiating to be standard X. Not standard X when it suits their team and standard X when it suits their franchise the most. That's where the change will happen. It will not happen with columnists. It will not happen with hand-wringing and woe is me, look what happened to poor McDavid and Draisaitl. Ken Holland wants to get a better standard of officiating. Then Ken Holland needs to get on the phone with his other 31 general managers and come together as a unified front. Then it will change. It will not be the columnists, no matter how much pressure they are adding or think that they are putting on the NHL, because I can promise you the NHL gives all of zero damn about what any of the columnists are saying when it comes to officiating.
Yeah, there's no question.
Sorry, I had to get that off my chest.
Yeah, clearly, Drew, you had some fire. You had to unleash it. You had to unleash that fireball, which is good because Seagram's is a sponsor of the illegalcurve.com website, a supporter of the show. So, I mean, the fireball is rolling through Drew right now. And it's funny because when you were going on your little screed there, I was thinking about when we had Bill Daly on the show years ago, and I asked him, I think it was the idea of 3-point games to kind of really remove this false parity in the league. And he tried to be like, well, what do you mean? What are you talking about? The league it's fine. And I thought to myself, okay, sure it is.
He knows they are. I mean, these guys aren't foolish. They haven't they haven't achieved the standards that they've achieved in their career because they're stupid people. They know exactly what's going on. And if they wanted to change it, they would change it. There is no You know why general managers don't want it changed? Because a general manager likes to go to their boss and say, hey, boss, we were only 4 points out of the playoffs. We're right there. We were really close. When in the reality is they only won less than 50% of their games outright. And the only reason they're close is because of the nonsense. It works for general managers. The reason why eventually we're going to see a play-in series like we're seeing in the NBA is because it works for general managers and it helps coaches and GMs keep their jobs. That's why these guys are self-interested. They're not, Ken Holland and Kevin Cheveldayoff and every general manager in the NHL, Ron Hextall in Pittsburgh. These guys are first and foremost self-interested.
For the record, that just sounds wrong.
I know it does. They're first and foremost self-interested in what keeps them employed, not what's best for the league and for the greater good of hockey as this wonderful ideal. I mean, they're human beings. They want to keep a paycheck coming in.
Yeah, there's no question about it. So, anyways, let's move off of the. Let's get back to the. If you want, I mean, people in the comment section, right? Led Floydian saying, how many times do we see Mike Smith handle the puck in the penalty zone? I counted at least 2. There were lots of instances. Now, I think Jeff Villette on Twitter posted that the top players in the league are not drawing penalties. Right. They're getting a lot of obstruction, a lot of hooking, a lot of whatever. But again, that's kind of the standard that the NHL is allowed. And so, to your point, Drew, and let's just wrap it up here. Unless the GMs make a huge push, you can tweet all you want. Tweets aren't going to do anything.
No, they're not. You're absolutely right that it doesn't. When you look at every other league, you look at the NBA, you look at the NFL, they protect their superstars. Does it make sense to me that the NHL doesn't protect their superstars and allows what I'm going to call lesser players, lesser talented players to get away with a lot of nonsense? Of course, it doesn't make any sense. Right. But the general managers like it because guess what? There's only a few superstars. Most teams don't have superstars, and most teams can't survive against superstars when without the clutching and the grabbing and the hooking. And so those general managers are only interested in their self-interest and their self-preservation, not in making things better for McDavid and Draisaitl. Because guess what? They don't have a McDavid and Draisaitl, so they don't give a damn. That's the reality of the situation. That's the whining of the columnists, the complaining is just, you're screaming into the ether. You're screaming into the void. Save your column inches and become a general manager if you want to make some changes to it. That's how you can change. You make change from the inside. It's not going to change from external forces. Okay, we're done with that now. Let's shift our focus, Dave Minuk, to goaltending and special teams and coaching ahead of round 2 between the Jets and the question marks. We don't know who that's going to be yet, but time will tell. That segment, before we get to that, the segment of the show is brought to you by Bernstein's Deli, official deli of Illegal Curve Hockey and home of the Illegal Curve Sandwich. Located in the Cordon Village Mall, Bernstein's Deli has been Winnipeg's deli destination for over 30 years. For more information, find them on Facebook or at bernsteinsdeli.com. Bernstein's undergoing a little bit of renovations. Hot food not currently available, but they got their great sandwiches. They got their great salads. You yourself can go to Bernstein's Deli, buy all the ingredients, take them home and make your own illegal curve sandwich in the comfort of your home, because Bernstein sells all the good stuff. They sell the thick cut rye bread you need. They sell the chicken schnitzel. They sell the salami. Maybe they'll throw in some fried onions. I'm not sure. They got some honey mustard I'm sure you can buy. Head to Bernstein's Deli. That's where you need to go. Get all your good stuff. Get yourself a nice illegal curve sandwich or a salad or a soup or some deli or some knishes, whatever you want. BernsteinsDeli.com for more information.
I actually got an email from someone, from a viewer, saying, asking about the illegal curve sandwich and whether it was, why it was off the menu. And I said, obviously you have to listen to the commercials. Right now you don't have that option, but to Drew's point, you can pick up the materials necessary and make your own at home.
Breaking news update: Ezzy is rejoined the chat, and now he's on narcotics. So
why doesn't he just come in the show?
No. I'm sort of enjoying this. I like the vibe that you and I have going. We don't have to,
This is very post-gamey right now.
It is very post-gamey, as he usually can't necessarily stay up those late hours. But he's keeping things interesting in the chat, undoubtedly. And now that he's on some T3s, I hope you wash those down with some alcohol, Ezzy, because I can't see that being a bad problem at all. Or you make sure you'll be really useful for your family later on during the course of the day. But in any event, we're glad that you have some medicine and that hopefully you're going to feel better and join us for the post-game show. We don't know when that's going to be. We know we're going to do post-game shows this week, God willing. Might be Tuesday, might be Thursday, might be Monday, might be Wednesday. We're not sure, but keep it tuned here to our YouTube channel. Subscribe. That way you get alerted each and every time we go live, be it with the Illegal Curve post-game show or with the Illegal Curve hockey show. Make sure if for some reason you're not already doing so, follow us on Twitter at Illegal Curve and our website with all the latest Winnipeg Jets news, audio. What's that website, Dave? Video too. What's that website?
A little website called illegalcurve.com.
There you go. Dave Minuk is a company man. The Jets, they're going to be hitting the practice ice in about 10 minutes time. Sort of standard at this point in time. The last few days, they've been practicing. There hasn't been a lot of news coming out of those practices. Everyone has been healthy for the most part. Everyone's been on the ice. The Black Aces come on the ice, about halfway through the practice. It is very much sort of Groundhog Day for the Winnipeg Jets this week, as it has been for most of us for the last 14, 16, 18 months, however long it's been at this point in time. I can't keep track anymore. Let's talk about goaltending, Dave, because I think it's fascinating. Connor Hellebuyck was fantastic for the Jets, as we know, in that first round against the Edmonton Oilers. The numbers: .950 save percentage, a 1.60 goals against average. The top goalie so far in the playoffs. Goalie number 2, Jack Campbell of the Toronto Maple Leafs. .944 save percentage, 1.61 goals against average. Carey Price certainly hasn't been bad based on what I would describe as regular season numbers, but his .919 save percentage and his 2.66 goals against average ranks him as the 13th best goaltender so far in these small sample size NHL playoffs. I know there's a lot of people sort of concerned about the Jets and the Carey Price factor if it is the Jets and the Habs. But what's more concerning? What's the sort of the tougher goalie matchup? Is it Jack Campbell or is it Carey Price?
Well, I mean, I think the Jets have shown that they can get to both guys, right? I think I don't know that you have the fear of impossibility there. I don't think when Connor Hellebuyck is on his game, a lot of people think to themselves, okay, there's a guy who's setting up a wall and go Jets 1.0 reference, a little Boulin Wall-esque against the Detroit Red Wings, many, many years ago in the playoffs. And I think
still remember that Game 5, indelible mark that Game 5 in Joe Louis
72 shots or something like that. It was something crazy. So yeah. I think Connor Hellebuyck is going to provide you that edge. I think that I touched on it earlier. I think Jack Campbell, the two Michigan boys who have a good friendship, a good relationship, that's definitely setting itself up for an interesting matchup, if that's what it ended up being. And Carey Price is a big-time goalie. I mean, I think it was Justin who said, he's got the medals behind his name. He knows what it's like to win in big games. But I would still give the edge to the Jets. So ultimately, when it comes to goaltending, you have to like what the Jets have, because this team has just had confidence. And I think was it Marty Baron that we had on when he was stealing Wi-Fi during the regular season? And I asked him,
he was into the forest or something when that happened. Yeah.
And I asked him about, Jack Campbell and his feeling, and his thought was, will he be able to, his concern was health, and would he be healthy enough to shoulder the load of the playoffs? Well, so far he's shown that he's capable of doing that. Mm-hmm. And Frederik Andersen, who last I saw him was being lit up by the Manitoba Moose in the AHL on a conditioning assignment. He's still not. We're not entirely sure what his status is, but I think it comes down to. I can only really think of one goal that wasn't a particularly good one on Campbell so far in the playoffs. Now I haven't admittedly watched all the Leafs Habs series, so I can't say about all of the goals, but I would say that he's been very good for this Toronto team. I mean, you look at that number, Drew. The numbers don't lie.
Yeah. It's not there's not a lot of falsehoods to those numbers. Now, he wasn't great in Game 5 against the Habs, but Jack Campbell. Here's what my comment would be: Carey Price in one game, or Carey Price in the first round, would terrify me. Being the opponent, Carey Price has not been able to put it together for multiple series where he's backstopped the team, where he's been able to carry the team for a long, long time, for a number of years. If there was a one-gamer, Carey Price is terrifying to see at the other end of the ice. But you remember last year in the bubble, he was great against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And so as a result, the Habs beat the Penguins unexpectedly, and they moved on to the first round of the playoffs. Well, then he wasn't as great anymore. Now, is that a factor of the team that's in front of him? Certainly, to some extent. I mean, the Habs are not a fantastic hockey team by any stretch of the imagination. But Carey Price's just the inconsistencies that we've seen in his game are concerning to me. From if I was a Habs fan, that he would be able to do it again in the second round of the playoffs. Jack Campbell, I know it's this. People keep saying small sample size. And that's legitimate. He hasn't done it for years. He hasn't done it, throughout his career. His career has been one of ups and more downs. Mm-hmm. But he has done it for long enough this year in the regular season and for the most part in this playoffs that him against Hellebuck, I think, is a closer matchup than Carey Price against Connor Hellebuck. And I find it bizarre that I am saying those words, but I do believe that there's some truth to them.
Yeah, I think I made that point earlier, and James Robinson says Hellebuck is on a mission. He wants to lift Lord Stanley's Cup. We didn't say the cup part. I added that, but and it's interesting, right? I think back to that preseason quote. I think it was preseason. The season's all blended in. I think it was Ted Wyman asking in availability with Connor Hellebuck, in terms of that idea of winning. Personal accolades, winning a Vezina, winning whatever, as a Hart Trophy as the most valuable player for the team, if he was going to do that. And we've said before that oftentimes Connor Hellebuck is no doubt this team's MVP. They wouldn't be where they are without him in net. And his point was there's only one thing he's focused on winning right now. So James, that was an accurate reflection of what Connor Hellebuck's sentiment is that it's not about the Vezinas, it's not about individual accolades, it's about winning that team award. So he seems dialed in. He seems like a guy who is focused on one thing right now, and that's pushing his team to success. And the one thing about Connor Hellebuck, and I've covered him since his AHL days, he doesn't really focus a lot on individual anyways. He really is a team guy. He talks about team success and mm-hmm. He'll say, look, if he has a crap game, then we know what we get with Connor Hellebuck. You're going to get the positivity. Like, I like my game.
Look at the bright side stuff.
And it's funny, right? So when he's playing poorly, he still talks in a positive way. Mm-hmm. When he's playing well, it's still not really about him. He'll say,
when he plays well, if he ever gets a shutout, what's his first comment? Well, the guys made it easy for me, and the guys in front of me made it easy. They kept everything on the outside. They cleared away any traffic. They cleared away any rebounds. He's certainly one to deflect success. I mean, more often than not, which I'm sure is part of his psychological routine. And it's certainly, I'm sure it plays well in the room and everything else. And I'm sure it's a combination. I mean, truthfully, he knows that a lot of it has to do with him. And I'm sure he takes a great amount of pride in his in his successes, and it takes great amount of pride in his achievements. But at the same time, he is also very happy to defer praise to his teammates in front of him.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the point that I think of this segment, is that idea of that Connor Hellebuck, the way he's playing right now, he's your edge in any series, I think. And I think he can win a series on his own. But I think with the way, I mean, he can't score goals, of course, which is the one thing goaltenders, with the exception of a few, Marty Brodeur, who's not, Ron Hextall. There's, of course, some goaltenders who tend to score goals. But I really think the way the Jets are playing in front of him, this is one of those instances where you can point to this team playing in front of him and saying they are playing well. So this team collectively is I think, to your point, Drew, it's one series. And it was a close series. It wasn't as if they steamrolled the Edmonton Oilers. So that's, of course, taken into account. But that's all we can do. Is talk about what we've seen in front of us, not what may, what could be. Well, I guess we could theorize, but we're trying to keep it focused on the here and now.
Let's take our final commercial break. Brian Engblom, our old friend, you remember from his Jets coverage, he's now with our friends in Tampa Bay, is set to join us momentarily. We'll be right back. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours, and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve Sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning, hour number 3 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now. And there he is at the bottom of our screen, a good friend of ours, back from his Jets analyst days, now back in the sunny confines of South Florida. Brian Engblom joins us on the show. Brian, how are you? Good to see you, buddy.
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing fine and dandy, Brian. Obviously, brought you on this Saturday morning. Appreciate your time, of course. Brought John to talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning, talk about round 2 coming up against the Carolina Hurricanes. Before we look forward, let's look back at what was the series victory against the Florida Panthers. I mean, Brian, is it as simple to say that the series was, the difference was Andre Vasilevsky in net for the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Florida Panthers having to go through 3 different goaltenders, including rookie goalie Spencer Knight, to try and find somebody who can shut down the Lightning talent?
Yeah, that's certainly one of the stories. I don't think there's any doubt about that. You can't deny the statistics of the first 2 goalies that played for them. Vasilevsky's always just that guy for the Lightning. They depend on him a lot. They did last year in the playoffs. They did previous year's regular season. They did again this regular season. So they had an edge in goal. There's no doubt about that. It was a really interesting series all the way along. The Lightning were better on the power play for sure. Florida, most of the way through, was better at even strength. But at the same time, it's your matchups, that matter. For example, McDonough and Chernak played against Barkov, and for me, Barkov's one of the best centers in the game. I mean, he truly is a dominant guy. He had 3 even strength points in the entire series. He was -8, so they did a number on him. And Huberdeau was the guy actually that was hurting the Lightning more than anybody else, and it showed in the point totals. But I thought McDonough and Chernak did a remarkable job, and of course, the goaltender's in there too, Vasilevsky. So a lot of interesting things. Really rough series. I mean, really rough. I watched that Montreal-Toronto game, that last game. I thought, holy mackerel. I mean, that's about 1/10 of the hitting. I mean, it wasn't even close physically to what the Lightning and Florida were doing. It was a punishing, really rough series. And game 1 of that series was one of the most fun games I've ever done on television, man. It had everything. Speed, in-your-face stuff, goal scoring. It was crazy good.
Brian, we talk about the Battle of Alberta. We talk about the Battle of Ontario. This is the first time we've ever talked about the Battle of Florida. Right. What kind of presence, what kind of news did this make out in the state of Florida? Because, like I said, this is the first time we've ever seen it.
It was terrific. The true fans, especially for both teams, have been anticipating this for a really long time. I think they both responded really well. I was actually really surprised at how crazy the fans in Florida got. I know what the fans here are like in Tampa. We've seen it, and of course, going all the way and winning the Cup last year, even though it was in the bubble. It was in the atmosphere, in the city. Here in Tampa, over the last probably 4 or 5 years, I mean, the city knows they have a really good team, and there certainly have been their disappointments, but really probably you can go back all the way to when they went to the finals against Chicago and lost to Chicago. And then the disappointments after that at different levels. But the fan base is really big and really true. So the Florida side of it surprised me a little bit. They were crazy and they were having fun, and it just added to the flavor. The whole state, I think, really got into it.
Brian Engblom is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media feeds. Brian, you look up and down the Lightning lineup, and it's, name player after name player after name player. Yet each and every playoffs, they seem to have somebody sort of come up that nobody's heard of, and nobody expects them to necessarily have the impact that they have. Ross Colton would probably have been that guy in the first round against the Panthers. He gets 2 goals. I'll be honest, he was not a name that was at the tip of my tongue when I was thinking about, impact players for the Lightning in this series. Who is Ross Colton, and what is the role that he's playing for this Tampa Bay Lightning team?
He's done a terrific job. He's a very skilled young man who's a quick study, and that's probably the best way to describe him. He put in his time in the American League. He learned the game at the pro level. They really got on him. He played 2 years in Syracuse, and they got on him prior to last season for sure and said, hey, you want to get to the NHL, you have to be a better skater, plain and simple. You just have to be better. And so he really took it to heart. He's a really good skater now. Took all that power skating and really put in the effort both in the gym and the technique of the skating as well. And so now it matched his hands and his head because he does have a really good head for the game. Now, he was playing with the Gord line for a while when Barclay Goodrow was still injured, and he did a heck of a job there because he does have the speed and he has the intelligence, and he was getting some more ice time. And what really shocked me is he scored a couple of goals even at the end of the season where I went, oh, man. I mean, Stamkos would have been proud of that wrist shot that he just scored on. He got some really good hands that startled me, quite frankly. And I think when you're a young guy like that, You're not known around the league, especially by the opposing goalies. So when a Stamkos or a Kucherov comes down on the goalie, they're like, okay, we're ready for something. Sometimes these young guys like Colton can really pull the trigger and surprise somebody. And I think Ross Colton did that. I think it's onward and upward for him. He'll be probably fourth line wing. And that's an important thing because I think in this Carolina series, you're going to need four lines going. They really go at a high pace. Carolina does. And they will use their four lines. So, I mean, if he can score some goals playing with Maroon and Tyler Johnson, it could be a real difference maker in games.
Brian Engblom, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're talking about the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Lightning through to the second round. They're going to face the Carolina Hurricanes in Game 1, which I believe is tomorrow, sort of late afternoon, early evening in Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, with the Hurricanes being the number 1 seed.
Right.
Brian, before we get into that series, I want to just think back to that first game. You talked about the energy level, and you played 650 plus games in the NHL, so you know what it's like. You played in Montreal, so you know what fans can do. How much of a difference? Because here in the North, I mean, this is the first time in 444 days that there's going to be fans in a Canadian building when there's 2,500 folks in Montreal. What element is that adding? Because I watched that Nashville Carolina overtime. And what a difference between that overtime and the Montreal-Toronto overtime that same night.
Yeah, I feel bad for all the Canadian teams. It's unfortunate, and I'm sure they watch these games in the U.S. and go, geez, I mean, it's a difference maker for sure. The players here have talked about it, and it energizes you, at the right time. And even if you're the road team, just that extra energy that the fans provide. I think last year, the teams learned how to sort of manufacture energy by themselves. I think they were extra vocal and talked to each other and celebrated sort of even more, when a goal was scored because the fans weren't there to do it for them. So this year, they said right away, I know our guys here in Tampa were just like, oh, it's so good to have them back. Look, we're in the entertainment business, right? We want fans around. This is why we play. So it does make a huge difference. I'm glad that at least, you get him some fans in Montreal for this game coming up. That's a great thing. And I'm sure they're looking forward really quickly to getting up into the 10, 12, whatever, 1,000 level that the governments will allow as soon as possible.
Brian, just sort of a bit of an aside, but if I'm not mistaken, you played for the Montreal Canadiens the last time prior to this year they faced the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs back in 78-79. What do you remember from that series? Obviously, it would have been the focus of the entire Canadian hockey world, the Habs and the Leafs. So just, if you remember, if you can sort of share any thoughts that from playing, the last time the Habs and the Leafs played against each other prior to this playoffs.
I'll be honest with you. I don't remember a lot of the details of the series, but I just remember that, they had some of the who's who of the NHL too, as did we, of course, on our Montreal team. But when you're playing against, Sittler and McDonald and Borja Salming and those guys, it's really something. Some fabulous names, and they had a good team. They just weren't quite as good as our team was. That was the last of the 4 cups in a row. We played them. That was the first round, and I was racking my brain the other day because I've heard so much about this because it was such a long time ago. The last that the two teams met. That another Winnipeg boy, Cam Connor, was playing for us, right? And I think it was that last game, and he scored the tying goal. All I remember is that Cam told me afterwards that he said he sat on the bench there for a long stretch, and then Bowman called his name and goes, "Get out there," or tapped him on the back. That's what it was. Tapped him on the back, "Get out of there." And Cam, like on the fly, to get out there. And Cam literally turned around to him and said, no, you touched me. You probably meant someone else. And he went, "Get out there, get out there." Cam scored a big goal. He came flying down off the wing. I don't know how long it had been since he had played, but I remember him telling me that. He said, I come in off the wing. I think it was Palmatier in goal, and he must have come out about 12, 14 feet, which he did a lot of the time. Cam faked the shot, went to make a move, and he kind of, my recollection is he kind of lost it,
but it went right underneath Palmatier, who was out of the net. He picked it up on the other side and tapped it into a virtually empty net for a big goal for us. And so he'd been sitting there all this time, thinks he's being tapped on the back by mistake, and then goes out and scores a big goal. So that's one of the things that sticks out in my memory. It was really a case of course, the two cities. I mean, even the French-English thing back then, it was really big. It was hotly contested on so many different levels. And for us, of course, it was great for us. We just moved onward and upward. And for Toronto, they were done after the series.
Brian, focusing on the next series for the Tampa Bay Lightning, how do you see them matching up against Carolina? Is this going to be just an unbelievable series? And obviously, both teams having a good chance to be a Stanley Cup winner at the end of this?
Carolina is a really good team. They're really good. The numbers are extremely even for both teams, including basically, they sawed it off. They won 4 games apiece. Nedeljkovic played 3 of the games. I think he was 2-1, and he was darn good, really good. And for me, Carolina over the last couple of years, their question mark has always been, is their goaltending going to be consistent enough? Can Reimer do it? Can Mrazek do it? Are they going to use a duo? And, on and on and on. But this kid has come on, and he seems like he's their guy right now. We could see Mrazek somewhere along the line if the kid's having a problem, but I know Nedeljkovic played really well against the Lightning. Carolina is a very fast team. They're an excellent transition team. They can forecheck like few teams in the league. I mean, they get on you fast and hard with all 5 guys. But then they'll also change it up a bit and sit back. I've seen them do it in the second periods a couple of times. Maybe that's strategy so they don't get guys caught. And so it kind of has you okay, are they coming or are they not coming? Then they turn the pucks over in the neutral zone, and that transition game is what kills you. I think their forwards are very underrated. Sebastian Aho is a hell of a player. That guy is a player. I'm telling you, both ends of the ice, he is really good. Teravainen is a great playmaker. Svechnikov is one of those guys. You take your eyes off him for a second, he's going to kill you. But what I love is the 1-2-3 matchup at center. You got Aho on the first line, you got Trocheck on the second, and you got Stahl on the third. So for the Lightning, you've got Braden Point, and you've got Cirelli, and you got Gord on the third line. So those 3 lines, not just the centers, but I love the center matchup at 1-2-3 all the way up and down. These lines really can mirror each other. They can do exactly the same types of things to you. And to me, it'll be really interesting at the end of the night. Special teams always matter, no doubt about that. The Lightning power play was simply outstanding against Florida. They'll need to do that again. Carolina took quite a few penalties, as did the Lightning in the first round. So that'll be a factor, as it always is. But who's going to have the points at the end? I think if Sebastian Aho and Dougie Hamilton have a ton of points at the end of the series, then Carolina will have won. And if it's Braden Point or Kucherov and Victor Hedman that really dominating, have a ton of points, then I think the Lightning will have won. But I see that as 2 guys on each team that really are going to matter.
Was the big trade deadline acquisition for the Lightning, as to be expected, an adjustment period to rejoin a new team. How has he started to sort of fit in? I noticed he's playing, sort of the 5th most minutes, among the Lightning, the defense through the first round. Hedman and McDonough, Sergachev and Chernak are really leading the way. Then there's a pretty big drop off to David Savard. Are you seeing signs that he's maybe becoming more comfortable in his role with the Tampa Bay Lightning?
Yeah, I think he is. It's definitely been a process. They've tried to find what the right fit is. He's played with everybody. He started off with Victor Hedman, only played really 1 game, and that was unfair because it was one of the worst games all year for the Lightning and for Victor Hedman. Victor got caught up the ice about 5 times. There were 2-on-1. It was a nightmare. I felt bad for Savard. His first game was a disaster, and it wasn't his fault. So then they put him with McDonough. And Victor Hedman's he's not easy. He's not your orthodox player. He's a very modern defenseman, right? Highly skilled. You let Victor do whatever he wants because he can. And so you have to read off of him because he'll fly right across to your side and blow a team up, defensively in the neutral zone. And you go, where did he come from? Right? So it's unorthodox. Savard, I don't think, was ready for that. So they put him with McDonough, who's a very sort of classic style, skate forwards up, skate backwards back, receive the rush kind of guy. And that's more what Savard is like. Now, that worked pretty well. But I think Savard had trouble getting used to the style that the Lightning play. The Lightning like to jam in the neutral zone. They are good at it. And Savard and his team in Columbus didn't do it that much. They even back off the blue line. It wasn't that hard to get over the blue line against Columbus. They relied on their back checkers to get back and help out in the middle of the ice. We'll give you the zone if you want, but try and get into the middle. Right? That's kind of the way they play. So he's been used to that for years. Lightning don't do that. So it was uncomfortable for him, right? I mean, McDonough and Chernak and those guys, they stand up at the red line, sometimes at the offensive blue line. So they're jamming. I think he always had that, I don't like this feeling, So when the series came up against Florida, I thought it was really intelligent. They moved them with Sergachev, and McDonough and Chernak went back together because they were going to match up against Barkov, and you don't want to let Barkov over the blue line easily. Mm-hmm. And you need both guys to stand up in order for it to work, right? So you can't have just one doing it and the other guy off the line. So I think that's why he moved back to the Sergachev combo. And so, they spotted him in and he penalty killed and all those things, made some really good plays. I think that made him more comfortable, but I think there's still more there. And the process really, to me, is still ongoing. He's been good, but I think he can even get better. And the more reps he has, I think he will.
Brian Engblom is a Tampa Bay Lightning analyst. The Lightning and the Hurricanes. Game 1 of that series goes tomorrow late afternoon. Brian, always appreciate your time. Always appreciate your insight. Nice to see you. We'll do it again real soon, buddy.
Absolutely, guys. Enjoy the play. Thanks for having me.
There he goes. Brian Engblom. Always appreciate hearing from our good friend, Brian Engblom.
Winnipegger.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
A Winnipegger.
A Winnipegger, of course. And, the fortuitous timing to have Brian on, be able to ask him about that old Leafs-Habs series.
How good is that knowledge? I mean, that's why you love talking to guys like Brian, because they have that insight and he can remember. I mean, he played in the game. So it's not like he just remembered it because he was watching from the sidelines. He was actually in the last Leafs-Habs series. So real good resource. Always love talking to Brian.
Exactly right. We miss him here in Winnipeg, a former staple of our the broadcasts back in the day. Dave Minuk, let's go with some final thoughts, focusing on the Jets special teams versus the Leafs and the Habs as we wrap up this Saturday's program. I mean, the Jets had a 30% success rate in the first round, which is a very good success rate. The lowest number of power play opportunities, though, when you look at compared to the Oilers, the Leafs, and the Habs. So that was certainly good that the Jets succeeded, but do they need to draw more penalties in the second round? I mean, the Jets, as I said, only 10 power play opportunities. The Oilers, if I recall correctly, had 11 against the Jets. The Leafs have had 17 power play opportunities in their 5 games so far, and the Habs have had 14 power play opportunities so far. The Habs 0 on their power play, 0 goals for in the 14 power play opportunities against the Leafs. Sort of, your thoughts on the special teams battle for round 2 against whomever it will end up being.
Sorry, I'm trying to keep it together, but as you just sent the text, and I made the mistake of looking at it, so I probably shouldn't have. And sometimes it's fun to see if we can get the other guys to laugh on the show, and he got me on that one. So
I've blocked them via text a long time ago, so it makes my life a lot easier.
Okay, well done. Sorry, so Drew, can you reset that question, because
sure.
I made the mistake of looking down. Ginsburg got me this time.
I'll tell you what, if there's a puffy dog in the corner, don't look at the puffy dog either. The question was about the special teams battle for round 2. I was saying the Jets had success in their limited power play opportunities. 3 goals.
No, I heard that part.
Opportunities.
What was the question?
My question is just sort of about the how impactful the special teams battle will be in the second round, be it against the Leafs or be it against the Montreal Canadiens.
Well, I think it's important, obviously. And when you have Nikolai Ehlers back and you have that second unit in significant quotes, there's no doubt about it that they can produce if given the opportunity.
Mhm.
And to your point, there weren't 21 penalties in total, and you're saying that the Leafs have had 17, right? Now they've obviously played one more game, but still, that's a pretty big number.
Yeah.
You don't want to be taking penalties. I mean, the Leafs have enough power. I think it was
despite their power play struggles over the last 2-3 months, which are hard to believe. Truly, you still don't want to necessarily give them the penalties and give them the catalyst to start going.
You don't want to wake up a sleeping giant. And
Right.
I think it's interesting because that's what Paul Maurice was talking about when he was asked about challenging for whether it was an offside or a goalie interference. And he said, I'm not giving those guys. I mean, Edmonton had 5-on-3s, but I think it was a 5-on-3. One of the challenges he would have had to done was with, I think, 1:46 left in the first penalty. So they would have had a 5-on-3. Because if I'm giving them a 5-on-3 for that long, they're scoring a goal. And that 4-1 game is out of reach. So it's interesting the thought process that's going into some of these decisions that are being made on the bench from the Jets coaching staff, well, from all coaching staffs, really. And I mean, I don't think it's rocket science, Drew. I think it's just a function of you just don't want to give Toronto opportunities. They do have the weapons. And talk about getting guys going. I mean, there's nothing better than playing 5-on-4 and having an opportunity for success, because that could sometimes lead to 5-on-5 success. We've seen that before, where guys get a little confidence because they start to get a little bit of mojo courtesy of the power play.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw what a power play goal did for the Winnipeg Jets in a 4-1 game. Matthew Perreault. I mean, look how, Murat talked about it in the first hour. Look how animated he was when he scored that goal and went to the bench. Now, he's an energy guy anyways, so he'll always be up to amp up the team. But it's an opportunity that you just can't afford. And the Jets PK is solid, but you just don't need to be allowing these guys to get in games. And especially if they're struggling 5-on-5, why give them that opportunity?
You're absolutely right. Since March 1st, and this is only looking at the regular season games, the Toronto Maple Leafs have the 30th power play in the NHL, operating at just over 10%. So you look at they've certainly been struggling, certainly at least since March. The Montreal Canadiens, they haven't scored a power play goal in their opportunities in the playoffs thus far. The Jets had some success, not a lot of chances. 30% success rate, though. You'll probably take that, each and every series, no questions asked. Yes, I see Jeff in the chat room saying 30th. I know it's hard to believe. The Toronto Maple Leafs, I just want to confirm this, since March 1st, from March 1st through the end of the regular season, a grand total of 34 hockey games have a success rate of 10%, which is 30th in the NHL. They've been better a little bit so far in the playoffs. So buyer beware, but that is worth noting that it's hard to believe that a team with that much firepower has struggled so seriously on the power play. Dave, we're going to be back on this week. Yes. We don't know when it's going to be. We don't know if it's going to be Tuesday night. We don't know yet if it's going to be Thursday night. I mean, it's likely to be one of those two, I would assume. It depends what happens tonight between the Leafs and the Habs. So if that series ends tonight, I think we'll know immediately after the game when game one of the Jets and Leafs series would be. We'll keep you posted, everybody. Best thing you can do, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter. If you're not doing both of those things already, I'm not sure what you're waiting for. Just click the button while you're at it. Click the thumbs up button, and we'll let you know as soon as we are live back for the Illegal Curve post-game show. I still can't get over, Dave, on Tuesday morning when it was 1:45, 2 a.m., that there were 500 plus people joining us in the chat room from all around the world. I mean,
there were 800 plus after game 3. It was insane.
Well, game 3, but at least game 3 was at a reasonable hour.
And it was a holiday the next day.
And it was a holiday the next day. Game 4 was in the middle of the freaking night.
Well,
and people from Austria, the Netherlands, our buddy Rowdy, Australia, Singapore, Thailand, London. I mean, we had people all around North America, all around the world.
Some people from North Kildonan,
the wild, exotic parts of North Kildonan. We want to see that continue into round 2, and we're going to go live, of course. We're going to be here to support you. We'll be your outlet once the second round of the playoffs begin. So
Kenny and Rennie.
And Kenny and Rennie after us as well, of course. Keep it locked.
By the way, so if we Drew, we were down at 2:30-ish, 2:15, 2:30, whatever it was. I mean, I saw that they were on, and I thought to myself, may God have mercy. And they must have gone till about 4.
Well, I mean,
at least 3:30 or 4 o'clock.
As Sean has said before, Ken has got a little more what I'm going to call flexibility, doesn't have necessarily the same family obligations that I have, that Ezzy has, that Sean has, that you have in some respects. So Kenny doesn't mind going until the wee hours. Kenny's a night owl. You're a night owl. It took me about a good couple days of some early bedtimes to recover from the Tuesday morning late night Illegal Curve post game show. But hey, Sandy, she got 1 hour of sleep that night.
That's hardcore.
Sandy, you are a legend. You are a warrior being able to keep that up. Al from Long Beach, California, we always appreciate you guys joining us wherever you may be around the world. That's the beauty of this format. We get to have the interaction. You can just click a button, and it doesn't matter if you're in Winnipeg, if you're in North Kildonan, if you're in Transcona, or if you're in Thailand, or if you're in the Netherlands. We're going to be here. You're going to be here, and it's going to be a fun time with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on Saturday mornings and the Illegal Curve post-game show after each and every Winnipeg Jets game.
Well, let's not forget, though, the Jets content doesn't end, Drew, because even though the show's going to end,
yes,
if you go to illegalcurve.com, we're going to have a practice report. We're going to have the post-game podcast. We've already got the morning papers. There is a ton of Jets news on illegalcurve.com right now. We've got all the media availability from the entire week, so you can get caught up on everything. So make sure you go to illegalcurve.com, check out all the content. And again, we're going to have, there's not going to be a lot of time, time to relax, because I'm going to get off of here with you, and then we're going to flip this thing over and start doing Jets media availability, which probably will be in about half an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think I've seen anything tweeted, so I'm not sure if there's anything that's going on right now. It's terribly exciting and worth even reporting from Bell MTS Place.
Exactly what my point was going to be. Exactly. The Jets allegedly hit the ice about 30 minutes ago for their practice, which is going to be probably very similar to the practice they had yesterday and very similar to the practice they had the day before. The fact that I'm not seeing any tweets at all is probably a reasonable sign that there's not a lot going on from Jets practice. But whatever it is, that it will be available on illegalcurve.com. Want to give a big shout out to our sponsors. They make this show possible. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Bernstein's Deli, Zappia Group Realty, Boston Pizza, our good friends at Seagram's and Lynn's Heating, Cooling, Sewer, and Drain. Thanks to all of these great sponsors for making the Illegal Curve Hockey Show possible. We do recommend you support these fine local businesses because they support Illegal Curve Hockey. For Ezra Ginsburg, who's been in the chat the entire time despite not being able to join us and texting us, so don't even ask about that. For Dave Minuk, I am your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.